Hello, everybody. My name is Bald Omni-Man, and I'm very honored and excited to bring y'all the Berserk Method 2023. This is the third edition in a series of self-coaching videos that I put together every year. Every time I learn something new or every time I want to expand upon an idea that I talked about in an effort to show y'all guys how to train. Listen, coaching, paying for it is not a cheap service, it's a luxury service. I grew up poor and I know the value of an extra dollar at the end of the month. Regardless of what your situation is, training is not something that you have to shell out for or just become a consumer to be able to understand. So, this is me giving back to y'all. And I do this every year because I believe in legacy and I believe in helping the next man succeed. Now, some people might be wondering why I go out of my way to do that. Like, why are you this way? Well, I grew up reading Berserk. Kentaro Miura was someone that I drew a lot of inspiration from, particularly his contributions in the form of Berserk. Berserk is a series about overcoming adversity and is very anti-nihilistic in a lot of ways, which has been a message that I've tried to portray in my channel and saying that I don't believe in a natural limit. I don't believe that your limitations are as confined as a lot of people will make you think they are, so that you can buy their programs, so that you can buy the supplements, so you can buy whatever. I don't think that it has to be that way, and it isn't that way. So this is why I put these things out here. So thank you to Miura Sensei, and thank you to you guys as well. This is me investing back into you because, just honestly, bro, a lot of the unforgettable experiences and people and things that I've been able to experience as a result of building this platform is predicated solely upon your support, quite honestly. So it's your likes, it's your shares, it's your views, it's your comments, it's your engagement. It's all these things that people have given me that I've never asked for. I've never asked for someone to like a video. I've never asked for someone to subscribe or anything like that. But I always find myself with everything that I need. So it's just right to give back. It's no strings attached. This is everything that I could download from my brain into one self-coaching video. Now, that being said, guys, this is going to be a formal presentation, but I am not going to read everything word for word off these slides. It's just not that kind of party, bro. I got to inject my personality into this. We're going to have fun. We're going to tell jokes just like we do on our regular videos, because to be honest with you, there's going to be fellas that watch this whole thing, and I have to keep y'all entertained. Now, the way that this is meant to be consumed, or a way that you can consume it, is you look at the table of contents. So starts with everything before you train. It goes into training concepts, the Berserk manifesto, like what makes the Berserk method the Berserk method, and then the coaching yourself guide. You look at the table of contents, you look at the timestamps, and you come back to this video repeatedly and you watch what you need. Now, as I said, I'm going to make this entertaining for fellas that are going to watch the whole thing in one go. So use timestamps if you want to, but you know, the watch time is appreciated if you're going to watch the full thing. That's how we get this video out there. Now, I gave y'all enough time to look at the table of contents, pause it, whatever. We're going to start with everything you need before training. Now, I am no stranger to what makes videos popular, okay? It's like, it's an art to it. So we're going to talk about what is the Berserk method, and then directly after that, we're going to get into a list, all right? So what is the Berserk method? The Berserk method is my exact process when it comes to making programs for myself or others. I mean that quite literally. I mean literally the same thoughts that I go through when I make spreadsheets every week are the thought processes that went into putting together this PowerPoint. I literally just downloaded my brain onto this PowerPoint. So that being said, this is exactly what I do. Most of my programs are all upper, lower, or full body, just because I found that regardless of what your goals are, that's usually just the best way to go about things. It might not be the most fun for everybody, but it's the best way to go about things in my experience. And that's with recent experience with full body, which we'll get into later. What I'm really about, though, and this is where the coaching aspect comes into play, is creating great non-training habits, which is something that I touched on in the last edition, but we're going to go in more in depth. Of course, upper back supremacy, guys. The upper back can take like infinity volume, bro. So I'm really big on prioritizing upper back, and abs get punished as well. Abs are the cornerstone of your physique. They're the cornerstone of your strength. Strong abs, strong guy. Aesthetic abs, aesthetic guy. It's just the way it is, bro. Now, also, I am really big and known for my precise exercise selection for your needs, and that includes isolation. I'm really great at looking at the individual and picking what they need. It's just a science, bro. I've been doing this for a while. But in today's video, I'm going to impart some of that onto you so that you can start to learn that and do it for yourself so that you can have that art down to a science. And then also, bro, like, guts is just the complete physical beast, okay? You're going to become a complete physical beast. You're going to have good work capacity. You're going to be strong, and you're going to be jacked. I've really sharpened up my knowledge on hypertrophy training in particular. I've put on a lot of mass over the past, what is it, like 19, 20 months now. I look like a Super Saiyan version of myself. And it's because, my venture into hypertrophy training. Now, that list I promised you, the Berserk Method Staple Lifts, these are lifts that pretty much no matter where you're at in your training, what your goals are, whether it's hypertrophy, strength, whatever. These are lifts that are going to be in there in some capacity, whether it's with a barbell, a dumbbell, or a machine version of this, you're going to do these. This is because, and I'm not going to talk about each intricately, but we'll talk about them categorically. Now, with the Larson press, the seal row, the RDL, the squats with little to no lower back fatigue, and the gymnastics work, those are covering common weaknesses. They're teaching you good movement patterns, and they're being a good stimulus to the target muscles that you want to work in the given movement pattern. They're also really low skill, other than the unique reach RDL, which I just made a video on, guys. It's the video where it's me doing a lat spread, and I think the title caption was like, "Oh man, help, I can't fit through doors anymore." Guys, reach RDLs is one of the reasons why I can't fit through doors anymore. Watch that video for that technique breakdown. But those are all, like, again, common weaknesses, teaching good movement, and of course looking cool while you do it. Now, something that I have really hammered home in many of my programs over the past, I'd say year, honestly, is the addition of float or isolation. We'll talk more about that later when we get to that section, but that's really just any exercise that is small enough for you to superset with something else in your program that isn't a main movement. And of course, I'm known for my weighted calisthenics. And then your targeted isolation. We just talked about targeted exercise selection. That's legs and that's arms. Now, real talk, bro, before we get into anything else with training, if you don't know where you're going, it almost doesn't matter what you're doing because you're going to walk in circles. And that's what so many people do the entirety of their training career, is walk in circles. Okay? So there are a few things that come into picking what your goals should be, starting with the needs versus wants analysis. We're going to get into this in the next slide or two, but on a high level, a needs versus wants analysis is you just sitting down and saying, okay, I'm trying to grow my biceps and my chest and my legs. What do I need to do that? Okay. And then I'm fulfilling my wants after. Okay. So you eat your meat and potatoes before you eat your cake. We'll get into more intricate detail later. That's just a high-level breakdown. There are some common goals that I've found. Everybody has a variation of one of these. You can go ahead and read them. We're going to talk a little bit about them. But for the fellas that just want to look good, very little in terms of training volume and overall progression in your training is going to be needed for that. It's really just good non-training variables. So your diet, your sleep, your hydration, and then having some level of muscular development and being lean. That's all that comes into it. The strength enjoyers are going to need to train for strength, and that's how you're going to audit yourself. And the metrics that you're going to use are going to be strength related. Your needs are going to be strength related. Your wants may be hypertrophy related, but if they're counterintuitive to your needs, well, you need to fix yourself. Same with hypertrophy. It's trickier for fellas that want both, and there's going to be an entire section for that. There's going to be your power builders and people of that nature. And then there's going to be people that I want X, but I'm doing Y because other people are. And I meant for X and Y to be there. Like I said, guys, this is my personality, and I'm a fella that's like, I say all the time, I'm terrible at math. Look, man, I meant to have X and Y there, but essentially, all jokes aside, there are people that, for example, want to be bigger, but they train for strength because that's what everybody else is doing, and vice versa. And then there's the fellas that don't know what they want. So you need to figure out where you are and where you want to go. So if you don't know what you want, you need to pick one of these, man. And it's not really anything, it's not a trick question, because you're going to get great results no matter what you pick. Now, talking more about the needs versus wants analysis. It should be used for every training decision you make. You need to set your goal first and then address your needs. Then you look at, after I address my needs, how much room do I have left? So for example, again, let's say you want to prioritize bicep training in your program. You address the bicep training first before you start looking at that crazy deadlift variation you saw on Instagram, and you include that, and then that your program gets dominated by something that isn't even related to getting big arms. All right, so you audit after you address your needs. After you address your needs in their totality, then you can start to address your wants. So after you fill up your program with whatever arm isolation you want, then you can start to look at other areas, other potential needs even, where you want to start to fill those categorically as well. And it's like a rinse and repeat process. You're fulfilling something, auditing, fulfilling something, auditing. Now, the way that you know that this is too much or it's counterintuitive is that you have to train. You have to put this into practice and see if it's too much. Now, there are so many template programs out here where we have an approximate idea of, at least at the minimum, of what we should be doing in the gym. You know if what you're doing specifically is too much if you can't recover from it, or if you're doing it and it's not fulfilling any of your goals. And that's where the auditing process comes into play. This is the biggest self-accountability piece, and is what a lot of you guys are going to need to master. Now, very related to that is going to be the creation and optimization. I hate that word, bro. The optimal bros ruined it, but it's a great word to describe this, bro. You really want to optimize your non-gym habits, and this is solely to support your training. Now, there's a mindset piece that comes into this, and a little story I want to tell you guys. If you shoot for the moon, I just messed up the parable, bro. You want to aim for the stars, and you may only get to the moon, but because you aim for the stars, you got to the moon. I think that's how the parable goes, bro. The idea is that you want to approach these as if you are like the world's strongest man, and your career depended upon this. You want to do your due diligence with all of these, as opposed to just trying to do just good enough, because you're going to get far better of a result regardless if you have the capacity to be world's strongest man, than if you just like, I'm gonna do just enough with my diet, I'm gonna get 6 hours of sleep is enough. No, you approach things like a champion, or you end up like a chump. Enough said. The major non-training variables, and we'll get into how to nail these in the next slide or two, are of course the calorie surplus. You got your protein and the rest of that. I ain't reading it. There you go. There's a cool acronym we're gonna get to in a second. I just glossed past that. Took me forever to come up with it. The calorie surplus, okay? It's the most effective way to recover. You grow in recovery. You don't grow in the gym. You grow after the gym. You grow in the time spent eating and sleeping, and not in the gym, okay? So the calorie surplus is going to make that time the most productive. Now, some easy ways to facilitate a calorie surplus are going to be to consume calories as early as possible. So for me specifically, I wake up in the morning, I have my coffee, I eat a couple PB&Js. That's an easy 500 calories the first 10 minutes I'm awake. Now, if you're a fella that can't eat solid meals because you're just not hungry in the morning, you have two options. It's one, just eat it anyway. And two, you can drink your calories. It could be something like a shake. Now, it's important that you're consistent with this, because you want to fall into habits. You don't want to have to think about so much what you're doing. So for me, I don't have to think about making PB&Js in the morning. I just make them and I freaking eat them. Also, this is something that is just, again, a truism. Appetite is just as trainable as your muscles. So if you can comfortably eat, say, 2,000 calories, if you go just a little bit outside your comfort zone, you can train yourself to be comfortable eating 2,500. Then you go out your comfort zone again. You're progressively overloading your appetite. It's something that's gradual, and it's something that people that struggle with that are going to need to be very patient about, but it's very true. There are tons of fellas that start off skinny and become complete houses, all right? A couple of fellas watching this video are probably in that group. Now, the bulking manifesto. This is very important, and I made sure to put this in here. We cut in order to make more room to bulk. Now, there's a lot of wisdom in that in saying, one, look, we're just cutting weight to make room to gain more quality weight later. There's going to be some level of fat gain with the muscle that you put on. I'm a content creator. It's literally part of the, me being popular and presentable to maintain a certain level of leanness. I am willing to put on fat to put on muscle. You should be willing to put on fat to put on muscle if you really want it enough. If you do things the right way that we talk about in this video, you're going to be what I call, Chris Jones used to refer to it a certain way. I don't know if I can even say that on YouTube anymore, but the OGs know what I'm referring to. But there's a level of leanness that looks good versus a level of leanness that is just exotic and unhealthy. You can maintain a good level of leanness as you bulk. Leanness is a spectrum, and that's how we want to pace out our bulks, right? So a lot of people overthink this part specifically. You just look to gain about a pound or two a month. You don't weigh yourself every day. You weigh yourself every other week, because if you lean bulk with like a 300 calorie surplus and you see that your weight didn't go anywhere in a week, weight fluctuates up and down. So where you may have gained some muscle and fat, you may have also lost some water potentially. So your weight didn't go anywhere. Look at things over a wide scope. Did I gain weight this month? Yes, I did. You might not have gained weight a particular week, but if you gained 1 or 2 pounds in that month, you're good to go. The principle is just gain it as slowly as possible so that you can minimize that fat gain while getting that same amount of muscle. Now, this is that cool acronym I was just talking about. You got your protein, your hydration, your sleep, and your stress. And it's, how did I pronounce it? Like fish or pss? I don't know, man. It's an acronym, and people love acronyms, so I included it. Easy way to ensure you get enough protein. I don't count protein. I barely count calories. I have an approximate, idea of how many calories I eat every day. I know I'm in a surplus because I'm gaining weight slowly. Protein is kind of that same thing. I don't know how many grams of protein I'm eating. I recommend that you just the very first few times track maybe, but if you just include some protein in every meal, dude, you're going to have enough protein to support muscle protein synthesis, and you're going to be good to go. Now, water and electrolytes are something that's a little trickier for people, because I know people. Maybe you're a fella that's like this, or you know someone that's like this. They go all day without drinking water. That's insane to me. Easy way to ensure that you don't do that is to just start to focus it around your training. Of course, you're going to drink water at other points during the day, but if you make sure that you get in some, and this is like 8 to 12 ounces, you get in some before, during, and after your training, along with your electrolytes, so that your magnesium, your potassium, your sodium, and then all the other stuff that comes in energy drinks. I like Prime. That's not like a sponsored comment. I just like it. It has the most magnesium, potassium out of any sports drink. That's what I like myself, along with just good old-fashioned water. Now, making sleep a priority is tough for people. And I put separate the wheat from the chaff because, I don't know, y'all play Resident Evil 5? You remember when Wesker said that at the end of the game? I forget. I think they were in the volcano or something. That might seem like strange that I'm even bringing that up for people that have never played that game before, but it's something that fella said. What I'm saying with this is you need to separate things that you like to do, but you could sacrifice to sleep. That's the chaff. The wheat is the sleep. Does that make sense, bro? If you are watching Netflix for 4 hours a day because this is honestly me sometimes, bro. This is just me gut checking myself. We all do it. We can all do a little bit better, and here's how you do it. If you're, binging Netflix anime, bro, for 4 hours a day, can you stand to just do that for an hour so that you have time to be able to relax before bed and then sleep more? Absolutely. Everybody has something that they can cut out. Minimizing your stress factors is the same thing, along the same lines. It's a removal strategy. You're taking things away or removing yourself from things that stress you out. That's friends, that's social obligations that are unnecessary. So if you have to begrudgingly do something, walk away from it. I'm not saying that you don't have a social life, you don't have friends, but people and things that are consistently stressing you out that you don't need to have in your life, fuck them. Simple as that. They don't have to be in your life. Now, a major thing that overwhelms people specific to training is paralysis by analysis and the fear of missing out. That is extremely stressful. The fear of, should I do this exercise? Should I do that? The biggest piece of wisdom is something that I learned in the military. And it's just the stupidest way that I learned it. When you're in boot camp, it is a very mundane experience. It's like the Groundhog Day. Every day is the same. You do the same thing every day. Same food, same people, same formations, same activities every day, same people yelling in your face. You learn to count your time by counting your meals. It's a compartmentalization strategy that they start to ingrain into you because it helps you in your military career regardless of what your specific role is. If you look at things one bite at a time, you think about what it takes to do that thing well or get to that thing. So you think about, what will it take for me today to get through this task? It's oftentimes a very simple thing that you can break down categorically, and then you go on to the next task. That skill alone will help a lot of y'all. I can make an entire video just about that. Now, daily activity, guys. So many people take less than 3,000 steps every day. I really recommend up to 8,000 steps a day, or at least 8,000 steps a day rather, but no more than 15K steps a day. Simply because when you go past 15,000 steps, your feet start to get sore and it starts to eat into you more than it gives. And it's, again, something you can train over time, but it's also time that you're spending away from doing other things. And 15K is kind of like that time that, that cutoff where like, dude, this is too much. There's a couple ways I like to do it, bro. You could just take walks after every meal, or you could take one long walk in the morning or at night. It's really good for clearing your mind, thinking about what you're going to do in your day or reflecting upon your day. What I don't want y'all to worry about, and this is what we're going to talk about real quick, is don't worry about, and this is more so in terms of adding in conditioning is what this is about. But don't worry about, dude, if I do some sprints after I work out or the day before I work out, is that going to tank my recovery before I train? You really have to go hard in the paint for you to tank your recovery with sprinting. Like, you have to sprint with the same frequency and intensity that you train weights with to even begin to think about overtraining, like your capacity to recover. It's just a truism, bro. It's just what it is. A lot of people ask questions like, how can I fit in martial arts and this and that without over exerting myself? You'd be surprised what the human body can be subjected to and recover from, bro. So if you need to, it's almost like a self-evident question. For example, if you're doing martial arts or something and your biceps or your arms are getting over fatigued, well, you just pull away a little bit of volume from your biceps, or you make sure that you're eating enough and nailing your non-training variables. It really, most of the time, is that, honestly. It's just you're not eating enough. So most of people's problems, if the question is, should I bulk, the answer is yes. Now, I like to keep the daily activity levels pretty static between when I'm cutting and bulking, at least at a minimum. What I'll say is, when you're cutting, you can add a little bit more daily steps to your step count. So if you have 8,000 when you're, maintaining or bulking, you can do like 12,000 or 10,000 when you're cutting, just to help burn a little bit more calories. Now, this is the check yourself checklist rather, when progress stalls. I should have a check yourself playlist. That's a great video idea series. Man, I'm good. But anyway, this is very simple, fellas. Look. If you're not making progress, you pick your low-hanging fruit. And we're going to expand on this later, but right now, I'm going to give this to you here. This is going to help 99% of y'all. Am I eating enough every day? It's a yes or no question. If the answer is no, you're fucking up. You need to eat enough. Am I hydrating before, during, and after training? And so on. You answer no to any of these, And that's literally why you're not making progress. Let me know if y'all are liking this this artwork that I'm sharing with y'all. I really took the time to pick my favorite pieces of artwork from Berserk. I don't think I've had a Zod picture in yet other than the first one. But our deep dive into leverages is going to be very helpful to a lot of y'all, because this is the almost the difference between people that are successful in their training and that are not successful. So, for example, if you look at a fellow with long arms and you train like him, but you have short arms, you're not going to make the results that he's doing. Vice versa. So this is all about relative torso or limb length. Now, just remember that, as I alluded to in that intro, it's not that these things are disadvantages. It's just that they're rules that you have to follow. I really wish people would think about leverages like rules. They are not death sentences. They are rules. They just have to follow them. And you follow them, you'll make great results. I have put on a lot of mass in the past 19, 20 months. I have long arms. I am a hip dominant squatter. My legs are huge. My arms have progressed a ton. Everything that I wanted to get bigger got bigger. Is what it is, bro. We're also going to talk about some best practices and then some considerations for strength and hypertrophy training relating to your leverages, and then a little bit of golden tidbits on isolation work. Take a shot every time I say golden tidbits. I think it's my first time this one. My last Berserk Method video, I swear I said it like 20 different times. I can't help, man. I'm dropping some golden tidbits. I just said it twice, damn. Anyway, best practices per major compound lift. Like I said, we're here to have fun, fellas, as well as give a formal presentation. I want to talk about just things that I want you to think about. Y'all know what the Golden Six is. Even people that barely train know what the Golden Six is. In case you didn't, there you go. You can read it. I have some things that I want short-limbed guys to think about, and then the long-armed mafia to think about. I hope YouTube doesn't nuke my video for saying the M word. I don't know if you can. I don't know what you can say on YouTube, man, other than obvious stuff. But short-limbed guys should maximize their exercise selection for upper body, particularly their grip width. So if you're a short-armed bencher, we'll start with that, and then we'll go into squats and things of that nature. And you want to grow your arms, it stands to reason that you should bench with a close grip. So a lot of things with growth and strength development come with picking low-hanging fruit, and that's one of them. Now, long arm guys should do the same, but they should make sure that they're undergoing enough movement prep. The reason for that is that you could take two guys that bench the same amount. So fella A benches 315, short arms. Fella B benches 315, long arms. Fella B is moving 315 pounds, potentially through twice the range of motion as the short arm guy. I've no bullshit saying that. There are fellas, I'm sure myself even, where my bench range of motion is more than someone's deadlift range of motion. That's a crazy thing to think about. And because you're moving it through a bigger range of motion, your joints and your smaller tendons and ligaments are undergoing a lot more stress, as well as a lot more stimulus as well. But it's something that you have to keep in mind. Now, short-limbed guys should just ensure with their lower body lifts developmentally that they're attacking their back as well. It's very common for guys with shorter legs that are really upright on squats to have underdeveloped posterior chains. And then the opposite is true for guys with long limbs. I'm a long-legged guy myself, right? I'm 5'11", but relative for my height, dude, you look at me, I'm torso, all legs. It's like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Jotaro Kujo. You know, he has long-ass legs. It's like that, bro, all right? I'm all legs. Squatting for me is a back exercise unless I do something about it. We're going to talk about how to manipulate these movements to ensure that the target muscles that you want to hit are getting hit, but these are just the major considerations. Keep in mind, bro, the Berserk Method Golden Staple Lifts do everything. So they address a lot of these considerations automatically. So that's why I included them first. Now, some additional considerations for strength training relating specifically to your leverages. There is going to be a way that you develop performance and a way that you develop your muscles. It's what my buddy Sam coined as performance metrics versus developmental metrics. It's a really intelligent way that he put it, and it's really indicative of the way that you should look at your training. Now, if you have good leverages for a lift, if you're training for strength, that's good. It helps you lift more weight. You want to work with your leverages because that's how you get strong. Now, developmentally, you want to be willing to work against them if need be, because you need to develop muscle mass to then be able to move more weight. Now, the way that you don't get lost in the sauce and you lose the plot is you audit. Is this thing doing what I need it to? All right. So, for example, we'll talk about squat as a good lift. People do belt squats because they want to grow their quads. But the way that a lot of people do belt squats, particularly power lifters, is they sit way back and there is no positive knee angle on the belt squat. And they swear that it's a top tier squat exercise, that it's super specific to the squat. It's like, you don't even know it. You don't see what you're doing. It's not doing what you think it is. And it's becoming more of a performance metric, because then these fellows load up a ton of plates and then they throw in bands and all these things. And the bands adjust the strength curve, so that's not necessarily bad. But then some people just do it because there's not enough plates that I can put on, bro. Well, if you were doing it as a developmental exercise and making sure that your knees were going over your toes, you wouldn't have that issue. And then there's, fellas that dude, they start to play the belt squat Olympics and they never develop their squat because they don't use their developmental tools and their performance tools correctly. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, in terms of developing good movement patterns, regardless of what your leverages are, I feel that these exercises ingrain good movement patterns or teach you things that are going to be beneficial to having good movement patterns. Now, I talked about this last time. I'm going to expand upon squats a little bit. Front squats are great. 2022 was the year of the front squat, bro. I had everybody front squatting. I didn't invent front squats. I would actually coin Dmitry Klokov as having the chattiest front squat known to man, and it's probably the reason why most people that do front squat actually front squat. But 2022, year of the front squat. It's really good at teaching you how to squat because it immutably punishes bad squat mechanics. So there are people that cheat front squats. I've seen it happen. People certainly still, turned it into a hip dominant exercise where it's more of a back exercise than a leg exercise. But if you're following good squat mechanics as per your leverages, you're staying as upright as you can, you're going to be rewarded for that. And if you're not, you lose the bar, or you have to fight to not lose the bar. And I have seen that happen, and it is a shit show. Now, that's in developing raw movement prowess. That's just something where if you include it in your program and you get good at them or get better at them, your squat's going to look better. Now, part of having a good-looking squat is being able to actually move the weight and contribute to moving the weight with your quads. Leg machines are very slept on for that. It's like a simple, you could think you have bad squat leverages because, dude, it looks like a stripper squat. But it could just be that your quads are weak, bro, and your back has to then take over for it. You even see it in fellas that have good squat leverages, is what it is. You use a leg machine and you get stronger at that leg machine, your quads get bigger, your squat is going to look a little bit better as a result of that as well. Now, in terms of your hip hinges, paused Romanian deadlifts are a pure hip hinge. And you're pausing at the bottom and using a slow tempo going down because it makes you extra aware if your body is doing the right thing or not. With a pure hip hinge, you should be feeling a big stretch on your hamstrings. That's how you know you're hip hinging properly. A lot of people, you tell them to do an RDL, and at first, to use more weight, they'll squat into it. Or there will be people that are so, ineffective at the movement pattern that they can hip hinge, but they can't hip hinge very far. Paused RDLs both develop prowess in the movement and extend your range of motion in that movement. So it'll develop your flexibility. Now, Larson press. We love Larson press. Every year is the year of Larson press. Shout out to Freaky D. I know you're watching this, bro. But Larson press is really good because, contrary to popular belief, is not an unstable exercise. It's not inherently dangerous. I do recommend that you use like a competition spec bench because you're doing that slippery commercial gym bench. It only took me falling off of one personally once for me to never do that again. But failing using ineffective equipment, it's a very stable and safe exercise. It does a lot of things like remove leg drive, allow you to lift less weight, and people look at it for the surface level benefits. What it's really good at is teaching you, it's a gut check. Do you have upper body tightness or not? If you don't, it's going to feel like an unstable exercise. If you have piss poor upper back tightness, if you have piss poor scapular mechanics, you're going to be acutely aware of it because it's going to feel loose because you don't have, your lower body to help contribute to the tightness and kind of mask that. It also teaches something that a lot of people neglect in their leg drive, which is glute drive. It's how you create lower body stability in the Larson press and how you aid in it becoming a stable exercise to begin with. It really just shows me when I look at someone Larson press, do they know how to actually bench press or not? Like for performance. It's like, it's an unga boonga push the bar up and down movement. But if we're talking about people that really understand the movement in terms of progressing it for strength and how to set it up for strength, it's a good gut check and it'll show you how to do that. Now, Z press or any non-back supported seated press has been really good for me specifically, and teaching and ingraining a non-layback pattern on the overhead press, because you just do this in a squat rack or with spotter arms, but you fall forward or fall backward, one of the two. Now, for leverages, considerations for hypertrophy. Similar to strength training, how you do things is important. So we talked about developmental metrics and then performance metrics and how you don't want to muddy the waters between the two. It's like cut and dry, one or the other. You either have form that is stimulative to the muscles for hypertrophy or not. This is particularly important for people that quote unquote have bad leverages. Okay, so for fellas that have long legs like myself, you're going to really want to have a good standard of form if you're going to use a compound lift for hypertrophy. You're going to want to master that lift and master that range of motion and that movement pattern. Something that I picked up on from weightlifters actually, specifically pertaining to squats. I can't speak for deadlifts or bench because they're not as sensitive to deviations and mechanics. But hip dominant squatters have a tendency to shoot their hips up and use their backs. Even if you ingrain a good movement pattern, as you fatigue, you're going to have to fight the urge to do that. So what weightlifters do is they only squat with what I have observed to be submaximal percentages a lot of the time in their training. And the Seeker Strength made a great video talking about this, which just crystallized everything that I had observed. But have you ever noticed that even the long-legged hippie, hip dominant, I'm not calling them hippies, like the hip dominant weightlifters, their squats always move fast. You never really see them grind the way you would see someone in the gym grind like a 20 repper out on the squats. It's purposeful because it's ingraining quality reps and good movement patterns. So that's just a little, I'm not going to say golden tidbit. I got to come up with another word for that. But that's a little tidbit for you fellas. Now, specifically pertaining to fellas with, those more hippie or longer arm leverages for compound lifts, you may want to consider when it's time to start filling in more of that volume with non-barbell work. And I know that's crazy for some people to hear that you can do things other than barbell compound lifts. But a hack squat is a crazy experience, bro. A deep leg press, 15 reps taking a true failure, you would be amazed to see what your quads can do when you push them to real failure without your back being a limiting factor. I promise you, it'll change your life. A little truism I want to leave with you guys is that if it's moving slow, it probably means you're doing it right, especially on squats. I know for me, if it's moving slow and I look back on camera and it moves at a good speed, more often than not, my knees were over my toes. Now, I also want to talk about isolation work because this isn't something that I really talked about so much on the last edition of this, because it wasn't something that I personally did a lot of myself, because at the time I couldn't do very much isolation work, at least from my upper body, because of elbow fatigue. I talked about in the last video about how to prepare for that elbow fatigue and to mitigate it, which we'll expand more upon later. But just to say, we're going to talk a lot more about isolation lifts. Now, specifically, and I say we because I have long arms and legs, we get more arm work from our upper body compounds just simply because our arm goes through a lot more range of motion than a fellow with shorter arms. A good test for this, actually, lay it out on the floor, get like a broomstick or something, right? And try to, lower the bar to your chest. If there's like 6 inches of space between that broom and your chest, my brother, you have long arms relative for your torso and for your height. Now, if you can touch that broomstick to your chest, bro, you have shorter arms for your height. So that's just a little test y'all can do to determine if you can't just look at yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, dude, my arms are long. It's just a little test for y'all to do it. Now, with your compound lifts, you're going to want to do as much of that as you can, because that is going to contribute meaningfully to your arm growth. I got decent arm size just from doing bench press variations, to be honest with you. They weren't as nice looking or as big as they are now, but I got more development doing things like close grip bench presses, dips, and things of that nature than some people do with isolations, because they ain't training them hard. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, I just want to talk about some best practices with bicep and tricep isolation that I've noticed for fellows with longer arms, and then also for like your bigger muscle groups, like the big movers, the pecs, the shoulders, so on. Biceps and triceps. It's something that is immutably popular with men. We all want to get bigger biceps. I really like back supported curls, and then any press down or extension that removes my shoulders and pecs from the equation. I find that people with long limbs, if you can accumulate a lot of volume with your compound lifts, we have pecs that are ahead of the curve, because listen, bro, if you get to a 350-pound bench press with arms that are pretty long, you're going to have orders of magnitude better pecs than a fellow with arms that are half your length. Not half literally, but he's moving the bar through substantially less range of motion. Your pecs are going to be bigger. Your triceps are going to be stronger. You're going to have overpowered pecs and shoulders, so you want to remove those things from the equation as much as possible. Also, your hips as well on your bicep curls. You'd be surprised how much a little bit of hip drive goes on a standing curl. So I actually like natural hypertrophy, bro. I know you're listening to this video. Incline curls are good for fellows like me, okay? It doesn't have to be with dumbbells. It could be with a cable. I know you're a fan of stretch-based curls, all jokes aside. That's more so just to be funny for the others watching. I know you have no issue with that. But I found for me, bro, that my longer arms, all of my strength and weaknesses coming into consideration, the incline curls are just really good for mitigating that. Now, in terms of the pecs, this is interesting because we just talked about how my pecs get worked more on bench press than a lot of people watching this, because my arms are statistically a lot longer than a lot of y'all's because I have longer arms. Most people have average or lower arms, you know what I'm saying? There's only so much volume you can do on those, though, because although they are more stimulative, they are more fatiguing as well. You may find that you can't do any more pressing because your elbows just can't handle it, or your shoulders or your pecs just can't, your tendons can't handle any more of that heavily loaded range of motion. But you may find that you can do a little bit of pec flies. It's kind of the same between long and short limbs. It's just about the exact measure that you use these things in. We're going to talk about the exact same thing for shorter arm guys. The measure is going to be different. They're going to do more of this kind of thing. Now, in terms of the leg work, Unfortunately, bro, the long legs ain't doing you no favors on squats. All right. Frequent lower body isolation and leg machines, honestly, too, are going to be your new, your new best friend. You're going to include them in your programs all the time, and that's great because that's included in the Berserk Method Staple Lifts. So there you go. Now, considerations for shorter arm lifters, and this is where the divide between, isolation being important or not important has experientially came into play and observationally as well. Now, shorter arm fellas typically get less arm work from their upper body compounds. So, as we talked about earlier, you're going to maximize that compound movement by adding in as many close grip variations as you can. Honestly, bro, if you're not competing in powerlifting, but you're training for strength and you want to have a good, heavily loaded movement, you can't go wrong with a good close grip bench. I know plenty of people that close grip bench a ton of weight, that weighted dip a ton of weight. These are all tricep dominant presses. You're not going to get any less strong for just picking things that are not only good strength movements, that'll help you developmentally. But that being said, because your range of motion is smaller, you're not getting really as much as you could as someone with longer arms on those close grip variations. It's just a box that you need to check. It's a low-hanging fruit. On top of that, isolations are going to be very important. And this is where the priority of things comes into play, like I just mentioned. You're going to want to pick those isolations that completely remove your tertiary muscles from the equation. And tertiary being a giggle brain way of saying like third, or like the moon is tertiary to the earth, that kind of thing. This is because you don't need any more chest. You don't want to work your chest with your isolations. You barely are working your arms on your compound movement, so you really want to maximize what arm stimulus you can get from them. I really like for shorter arm guys to just, all those things being considered, add an arm day. Now, where you fellas are blessed is that fellas that typically have shorter legs, you get more quad out of it, bro. You don't have to do every, hack squat and every leg press, at least as much as I do. It's a targeted lower bodies exercise selection. You're still doing it and you can still benefit from it, but the volumes and the priority that you're going to place on it is not going to be the volume or priority that I would place on it, because you just don't have to do as much of it. Now, what I will say is that your low back is not going to be as strong per pound lifted on, say, like a squat or a deadlift as it would be mine, because I'm using more of my back on a squat than you are. So your back may be behind the curve. I really like back extensions. You spam those, your back's going to get more developed. Again, the Berserk Method Staple Lifts, the Reach RDLs also cover that. So that's everything you need to know before training, fellas. I really want to dive deep now into some training concepts. These are things that I could make entire videos about. I'm going to give y'all a second to appreciate this beautiful artwork. I can make entire videos about each of these things, but I'm just going to briefly go over each of these things on a high level so that you can come back to it and just learn it. Now, I want to talk about first every type of training progression that you need to learn, whether that's you're a beginner or you're advanced. It's everything from the basics of progressive overload to more advanced things, all your double progressions, and then everything in between and how to put it all together. You can read that shit. Now, the basics of progressive overload. It has some main metrics you want to keep in mind. You add reps, you add sets, you add load, you add density, or you can add more quality reps, meaning if you did 5 shit reps, progressive overload could be doing 4 good reps and 1 shit rep, or all good reps. Does that make sense? Now, with strength training in particular, load is your end goal. So you want to take the least steps that you can to get to that load. With hypertrophy training, you want everything. You want to take as many metrics as you can, because each and every one of these things is going to add muscle to your frame. It wouldn't make sense just to chase only load. You want to chase all of those things if you can. Now, regardless of what that is, what your goal is, they're both going to require a minimum level of rep quality to one, be productive, two, be safe, and three, allow you to just be able to make progress at all. Now, double progression. This is something that guys have probably heard me talk about. I'm usually pretty good about giving examples, but you go pause this, read that. It's literally that simple, bro. I'm not going to explain the mechanics. I'm just going to talk about the benefits. It's really good because it auto-regulates everything in your training. It changes automatically when you're doing too much. So let's just say you go to failure on set one and you fall out of the rep range on set two. You know that next time you come into the gym, you need to use less weight because you want to stay in that rep range. Okay? I really like using it for isolations or on movements that are hard to add load on quickly. So that could be things like, bicep curls, tricep extensions, lateral raises, all these exercises that have an objectively low amount of weight that you can add to them year over year. Bro, ain't nobody going from a 40-pound dumbbell curl to an 80-pound dumbbell curl. What do people say, man? Everything is a back exercise if you do it wrong enough. I think I wrote that somewhere in here too. Ain't nobody doing that unless you throwing your back into it and do a power clean, bro. You're adding a low objective amount of weight year over year. Dynamic double progression. I'm going to talk about this a little bit differently because some people don't know what the real difference between them two is. Mechanically, it's very similar to double progression. So if you paused and you looked at that, like I said, you read it, it's literally that simple. The only difference is that each set is progressing individually. Pause that, read it. There you go. That's how it works. This is literally how it works. You don't have to do anything but read that, and that is how it works. Again, I'm going to explain what it's good for. It's really good for when you're more of an intermediate lifter and progress is slowed down on double progression. And that's what it's really good for in terms of movements. Compound lifts, when double progression slows down and it doesn't work on them, dynamic double progression is money. Or therefore on lifts otherwise that have just slowed down. So it could be like, for example, there are certain bicep exercises I do, like incline curls, for example, where I'll use a dynamic double progression. Right now, I think my best set of incline curls is 50 pounds for 9. Ain't too shabby, might I add. I started off with freaking 30-pound dumbbells on those things, and I've seen some pretty good gains from getting to 50 pounds for 9. But I use a dynamic double progression on that. Now, RPE, this is like garlic or kryptonite or, in Harry Potter, you can't say Voldemort. It's kind of like that, bro. You don't say Voldemort's name. RPE is not the boogeyman. It's not complicated. I'm going to break it down very simple. Why is it useful? Why should I learn this stupid RPE, rate of perceived exertion? I'm just going to go to failure every time, bro. Fuck yeah. Listen, it's very useful for pacing out your training. And if you know what failure feels like, you've already accomplished the first step. You have an objective measure of what an RPE 10 is, or 0 reps in reserve is. That's the most important part, actually. Where it takes some mindfulness, and where I say that it's more of an art and not an exact science, okay? It's mostly there for you to pace out how hard you go throughout your training and to create momentum throughout your training. You pay attention to what your body does. The two major signs are bar speed slowing down and the bar feeling objectively heavier over the course of your set. All right? If you're given like a RPE 7, you can stop as soon as the bar slows down substantially, bro, and you feel it's getting heavier. You know what failure feels like. You know that you could get another rep and probably another one, but you know it would be pretty hard to get that second one. So you know that third one will be the last one, bro. Now, and what's very useful in determining all this is recording yourself. This is very important for anything you do in your training. Knowing what you're doing and what it looks like is super important for adjusting it, adjusting form, adjusting your effort. Something could, in your mind, feel like it's super hard, but it could fly up 1,000,000 miles per hour. And I know for a fact you could have did 12 more. It's really a skill that you want to refine over time. But the cool thing with double progression and dynamic double progression is that you're going to be topping out your reps and adding more weight over time. So those two things really teach you how to do this automatically. Now, this is where we're going to talk a little bit about some strength training stuff. I've sharpened up a lot on hypertrophy, and I've talked a lot about that. But I want to talk about some strength training, I was going to say tidbits again, man. We're going to drop some strength training keys. I'm not going to say tidbits again, man. At least not on purpose. Basic linear periodization. People see it as this thing that stalls your progress and it somehow doesn't work when you get strong. I think that you can't use it on everything, but I don't think you should turn your back on it. And let me tell you why. It's great for pacing out your training, and it always will be great for pacing out your training. All you need to know is your max. And it's great for people that don't really know how to use RPE that much. And ironically, you can use this to learn RPE, and we'll talk about it. Basically, bro, you start light. You bump up in weight every week, and then you go heavy. That's what it is. And at the end of the cycle, you chip your PR. Something that I want to talk about, and I talk about all the time, but before we talk about in a couple slides, what this looks like specifically is the idea of securing your PR. If you get at the end of that cycle, bro, and you don't secure your PR because you added 50 pounds and tried to hit a single instead of adding 5 or 10, you messed up. You want to secure that PR first. There's nothing stopping you from hitting an easy PR and then saying, hey, man, this was easy. I know next time I come back and I do this again, I'm going to have room for this to be easy again next time. Or if you want, balling out and taking 2 PRs that day, but you at least get the 1 PR. Make all of it worth it. Now, the way that I like to use this particular style, linear periodization, where you start at 60, end at 90, and then go for a single, is I like to auto-regulate the reps with RPE. Basically just saying, however many reps you can do while keeping 2, 3, 4 in the tank each set, depends, is how many I want you to do. With 60%, that's going to be like on squats, 12s, 10s, could be 15s if you're really good at reps. A lot of people aren't going to be doing 15s starting off a training cycle because the work capacity is going to be crazy. But I like to auto-regulate with that because then it keeps things fluid. I can't just say that, like, bro, you're going to do 5s when you get to 70% because it's just going to depend upon the day. Now, how I like to structure strength training in terms of how I look at lifts is I have my main lifts. I hit those with some form of linear periodization. The variations of those lifts are going to be things like, okay, if the main lift is bench press, the variation is going to be close grip bench. It's basically the same shit, bro. It's a minor deviation. I'm going to use the same thing. The weights are going to be different, but it's going to be following a similar progression. I might just choose to hit, whereas opposed to on a bench, I'm going to hit like a 1 rep max at the end maybe. I might hit like a heavy set of 4 or 5 at the end of the close grip bench, and that's how we do that. Now, accessories, it's pretty cool because you also are going to use dynamic or double dynamic progression for your accessories, and that's anything. I put evil laughter, and that's because I put cluster sets. We'll talk about that in a sec. But it's going to be anything that's not a variation or main lift. So like dips, tricep press downs, anything. If it's not a main lift, the answer is yes. Cluster sets are brutal. That's why I put the muhaha evil laughter. They're really fun though. Now, just some basic considerations, being that I don't like to just assign reps with that and just say rep it until don't go to failure, bro. Don't go to failure. Leave a couple in the tank. Your reps are naturally going to start high as a result of that and then taper down over time. Like I alluded to earlier, your intro week is going to feel tough cardio-wise. All right, man, it's not easy to do a set of 12s on the squats when you just 2 weeks ago were hitting doubles and triples and singles and shit. It's going to be tough on your cardio, but it gets built over time. And this is kind of where we talk about the difference between a hypertrophy block and then what is in reality, in practice, a work capacity block. You're not going to build a meaningful amount of muscle in over the course of one block. So to think that we could get everything we need hypertrophy-wise by focusing on that on one block is arrogant. It's wrong unless you're, on vitamin S, which is nothing against you for saying that. But if you're natural and thinking you're going to gain muscle in an appreciable amount of muscle, all the muscle that you need in 4 weeks, it's foolhardy. It's more of a work capacity builder, which is equally valuable in the long term. You need to be able to do work to get bigger. It's very valuable. It also breaks things when you do it like this in the blocks naturally. So you have your work capacity block, reps get lower, and then you get your strength block. You start to taper into your peaking block where the reps get super low and your volume is dropping naturally with each, block or phase of this progression that you move into. Now, another type of linear periodization that I use, particularly for powerlifters and strength enthusiasts that do have experience with RPE or are comfortable in our objective, is this type of progression. It's where your top sets are auto-regulated, and that's a GigaBrain way of saying they are automatically selected based on RPE. That requires a lot of objectivity. The back-off sets, in other words, the volume, the reps that you're hitting, the meat of the workout, is calculated off that top set. So you're taking a percentage of whatever you hit that day, and then you're doing your reps with that. Now, your reps are going to start with lower exertion and over time and with higher exertion. And we're going to get into exactly what that looks like in a sec. But this is good for people that don't know what their training max is or, just are good with RPE. And it's great for picking an effort that is appropriate for how you're feeling that day. So if you feel like shit, the other type of periodization is also auto-regulated for when you feel like crap. But a lot of fellas are not going to want to freaking put on 75% and then hit 4s or 5s with it because they're feeling a little cranky that day when they just hit 73% for freaking 8s. You're still going to auto-regulate for it, but it's just going to be a mindset piece. Now, laying it all out, just like I promised, for the basic linear periodization first, and then our alternative linear periodization. Week 1, I like to start with anywhere between 60 and 65% of your current 1 rep max. Not what you hit 3 months ago, what you hit recently, what you can hit now. If I said, bro, go to the gym now and hit a squat max, that is your training max, bro. It isn't what you hit 4 months ago. Squatting high or whatever. It's what you can hit now. 60 to 65% of that is low enough that when you're hitting those higher reps, I've found that it's not doing a whole lot for your strength, but it's allowing you to hit higher reps and build work capacity without overstressing yourself. That's what I really like about it. I know my buddy Sam is really keen on this as well. He could tell you what he enjoys about it. That's what I found works about it for me. Fellas, I got a buddy right now. I'm training him. He was talking about how his squats were rough at first, but then they got better. And it helped him build grit and help him, feel like he's accomplishing something in his training because he's building work capacity. He's getting in a lot of work. I do 3 or 4 sets at 60 to 65%. And like I said, we just keep a couple reps in the tank every time. That's the only thing that you need to make sure you do. Every week after that, you add between 3, 4, sometimes 5%. Just depends upon, if it goes from 76 to freaking 79%, dude, I'm going to be like, bro, just go to 80%. We ain't doing no 79%. Come on now. It's just a more round number. But the idea is when you add your percentages, you're adding on a little bit of weight every week. You want to make sure you stay in the pocket. That means you don't go out of pocket. You stay in the pocket, bro. Being out of pocket means you're doing too much. At least that's what it means when I say it. Staying in the pocket means you're keeping a couple reps in the tank every week and for every set. Now, something that I like for this, basic LP is I like to have fellas add in, or I will add in if I am coaching them, singles when they're around 80%-ish or so. And that's just so that they can get accustomed to lifting something once very well. We're training to hit a 1 rep max. We need to be able to lift something once very well. The form that you use when you lift something once is going to be different in some capacity than the form you use to lift something twice or 3 times or 4 times. It gets less specific the higher reps you get. The singles that you do should only be marginally higher than what your volume is. Dr. Mike made a great video where he talked about post-activation potentiation. That is a mouthful, and I had to really think about it before, so I didn't slip over it. But he talked about how hitting heavy singles is good for hypertrophy because it makes the rep work stronger. It makes it so that you can lift more weight on it and do more damage to your muscles. But he was very distinctive in saying that these heavy singles, quote unquote, should be like, dude, if you're working out with 200 pounds, your heavy single is going to be with like 210. Okay, you don't go to 275 or 300, dude. You do like a little bit more than that. And I also, that being said, used to have the opposite opinion. I do think that truly heavy singles year-round are a good thing, but I feel like there's a time and a place for it, and I feel like this is where I feel the true limitation with that is. We'll take a little detour for a sec to talk about this, actually. I think that it's equally efficacious, that it works equally well. I feel that realistically, though, many people, myself included, are not going to just be able to hit a 90% single. That 90% is going to feel like freaking 60% someday. So you're going to want to throw some extra weight on it, and it stops becoming a tool to help you in your training, and it starts to be something that is actively hindering it. So I just like going a little bit higher than whatever my volume is. Now, once you hit 90% or so, it's like week 9, week 10 or whatever. I'm no mathematician. I don't know that off the top of my head. You take 3 or 4% off of 60 or 65 and however many weeks it takes to get to 90. You're ready to hit a heavy single or a rep PR. If that 90% felt sweet, you're good to go. If it felt, that's where you may want to take a look at, did I perform everything leading up to this adequately? Have I been eating enough, sleeping enough, and auditing everything as you should be throughout this? Now, I like to end things either with a rep PR or a weight PR. So if I hit a 90% single on, say, week 8, and I feel like, dude, I could hit 8 reps with this. I'm going to hit 8 reps with it, bro. But if it feels, pretty heavy, but still pretty good, I'm just going to go for a weight PR. I'm going to secure that 1 rep max PR. It's not really important what you do. If you're training for size, or rather, if you're training for specificity to a 1 rep max, you're going to pick the single. But, if you're not a power lifter and you just want to be strong, you can pick either. Now, with the alternative linear periodization, it's still the same thing, bro. You're going from light to heavy. That's what the ultimate goal is. It's just different ways to skin the cat, different ways to cut the mustard. You start with your high reps for your top sets. I like spending about 3, maybe 4 weeks if I need to take a deload on those higher reps. And that's going to vary from RPE 6 to RPE 9. So in other words, you have 4 reps in reserve to just 1 rep in reserve. I add in that RPE 6 week because 4 reps in reserve, bro, that's easy compared to if you were just doing 9 reps or RPE 9 rather, and you have 1 rep in reserve each set. That's orders of magnitude harder than having 4 in the tank each set. So it'll allow you to freshen up and then jump right back into what would be if you're going from 9s then to 7s. And this is kind of the order I like to follow when I do this type of LP. I start with 9s, 3 to 4 weeks of 9s, 7s, again, 5s, 3s, and then down to 1s. Now the back off sets, as I mentioned, are based on the top set. And what I found is that if you take 80 to 85%, so if you take 200, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but I think 80% of 200 is like 160. Someone do that math, and if I get it right, bro, I swear to goodness, I'm a math whiz. I think it's 160. I could be totally wrong, but if you take 80 or 85% of your top set, bro, you're going to be good to go. You're going to be able to match the reps that you did on your top set while still keeping good reps in reserve until at least your last set. And I like to have 2 to 3 back offs. So it amounts to essentially between 3 and 4 sets, just like that last style of LP that I like. Now, something that I like, and this is just a particularity of mine, if that's even a word. It's just that, something that I like. I like when the reps are higher. I usually like for that rep count on those back downs to match the top set. So the back downs usually are going to be 9s if the top set is 9s. If I'm feeling like the fella needs more work capacity, I might do slightly higher reps. But certainly when the reps are lower on the top set, I'll do more reps on the back downs just so we can maintain some more work capacity. That isn't even something like, I just thought about this now, but I'm maintaining a little bit of work capacity with this style of coaching that I do. It's not inherent to this. You can do it on the other style, but it's just something that I personally do with that. Now, putting it all together, if you're a hypertrophy enthusiast, you're mainly going to be using double progression, dynamic double progression. There is no need for you to venture into linear periodization and how I outlined it on a hypertrophy program. DP and DDP is going to be your manifesto, baby. All right. For strength enjoyers, you're mainly going to be using some form of linear periodization for your main compounds or their variations. You'll also be using DP or DDP on your accessories, so things like dips, tricep press downs, like we said. RPE and knowing how to create momentum and hold back is going to be useful for both, and that's how we tie it all up. Now, we talked about strength. I want to jump back into hypertrophy. We're about an hour in, fellas, about halfway through. We're going to talk about hypertrophy. This is what I've sharpened up on the most. I've sharpened up on my strength because strength is, a love of mine as well. But I had a lot more to learn over the past year and a half, even in the midst of making the last Berserk Method self-coaching video. I had a lot to learn for hypertrophy and that. So this is dating back to, honestly, the first self-coaching video. Over the course of years, I've sharpened up a lot on hypertrophy to the point where I'm confident in my ability to relay this to you because I have gotten fucking jacked, bro. I say that because I've put on a lot of size over the past couple of years, and because I could do that for myself, I have been able to give others similar results, that have genetics like mine. And even fellas that don't have genetics like mine, these are still principles that you can take and put into your training, and you're going to get so much bigger for it. Now, first and foremost, 101. If you're not following complete progressive overload, you're wrong. You're fucking up. You need to follow complete progressive overload. But what if I just get stronger? Yes, if you get stronger, you will get bigger. But why leave everything else on the table? It's like, bro, all right, let's just say we're in the liquor store, right? And I'm like, bro, you're looking at where they keep the snacks at. He's like, dude, go ahead and grab whatever you want off the snack rack on me. So it's Doritos, it's Fritos, and it's freaking whatever else you like, bro. Whatever else you can imagine, whatever else is a snack for you. And you're like, I'm going to get full off of just Cheez-Its, bro. I'm looking at you like, man, why didn't you just grab everything? That's the whole point. You do everything you can because everything adds up to the ultimate goal, and that's getting bigger. You're getting bigger from eating snacks. You're getting bigger from your hypertrophy training by growing muscle, and you want to take every avenue you can to take that. That was just a funny story, bro. I just pulled that out my ass, but I also, and then we're going to cover this in a sec, all jokes aside, talk about rep quality and its relationship to performance and the ratio that you need to keep between the two. People talk about the stimulus to fatigue ratio. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But this is a ratio that I haven't heard talked about a whole lot. I have heard it talked about before, but not a whole ton. Something we're going to talk about. And then also carryover. Now, talking about that, unspoken ratio, the rep quality to performance ratio. What's an acronym we can use? The R to P ratio. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Reps should, in hypertrophy training, have a minimum rep quality. If you train like shit, you're going to get a mountain of shit. If you train good, you're going to get it, you're going to get good results. There is such a thing as too clean. This is where the Grandma Josephine working out with pink dumbbells, Mike Chang, 6-pack shortcuts meme comes into play. Listen, you can only lift a light weight so slowly before it becomes a waste of your time. There is a balance between it. You have to balance between reps that are sloppy and reps that are so controlled and so clean that you're not deriving any stimulus for it. And it's a ratio. It really is a ratio. Now, being that you don't want to have too much of it, you can introduce a little bit of either and that use that as a way to progress in your training. And that is something that I have not heard a lot of people other than our boy Jeffrey talk about. And we're particularly talking about using sloppier form as a means of progressive overload on purpose. The fella is jacked. He knows how to do an exercise properly. If you specifically introduce form that is slower, it's almost like it is a form of periodization. You can progress with that sloppy form just to get more reps or weight on the table to break past the plateau in your training. And then you can clean that up over time. You can always clean up your form. If you can put another rep on the table, bro, you can clean that rep up next time you do it. It just is what it is. So if you have to pick between adding that rep to the table that's a little bit sloppier, not a shit ton sloppier, but a little bit sloppier, so a little bit of body English, a little bit of raising the elbow, a little bit of less of a pause on the bench press, you can do that better next time. And that is really slept on as a means of progression. Now, the stimulus to fatigue ratio. And this is going to be a little bit of a gut check, fellas, because we got a bunch of Larson press enjoyers that don't bench press 315 pounds, which is not a knock on you. It's just, I want to talk about appropriate tools for the appropriate time. It's a cool lift, bro. I don't want you to stop doing it, but just keep this in mind. Stimulus to fatigue ratio is literally just cost and benefit, bro. It is what do you get from something versus what does it cost? If something costs more than it gives you, why are you doing it? You're bleeding money, all right? Now, for new lifters, these self-limiting variations like the Larson press we just mentioned are usually not needed because your best stimulus is going to come from just a regular bench press, bro, because the amount of weight that you can use and the stimulus that you're getting is already pretty low. Why lower the amount of weight that you're using even more? You're not getting anything from it. Now, the Larson press can still be a good movement to hyper-target the upper body because you're removing leg drive, but a lot of fellas don't even know how to use leg drive to begin with. It's just a soup sandwich all around, bro. All I'm saying is these self-limiting variations are not needed. You'll know when you need to use a self-limiting variation. It's like Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. We'll just talk about him for a sec, okay? Frieza did not need to have those forms to limit his power because he was weak. He needed them because he was strong. Imagine a Cyberman. Yes, this is my most powered down form, dude. The dude's power level was was only 1200. I just weaved out a little bit, bro. But we're far enough into the video where we're gonna start getting a little weird. But all I'm saying is, bro, is that you'll know when you need to use those. And I jotted down barbell rows versus hill rows, but it's a similar thing. You don't have to worry about over fatiguing your back on barbell rows if you barbell row 135 pounds. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen even if you're really strong. If you deadlift 700 pounds, what are you going to use on barbell rows? 275 pounds? I don't do more than 275 on barbell rows. It doesn't over fatigue my back. It actually gives it a medium-ish workout. It's like, I feel my back. This is cool. It's not going to over fatigue you, bro. But that is going to become, all jokes aside, more important as you become stronger. We'll talk about self-limiting variations a little bit later from now, but it's just something that I wanted to put out there for you guys. It is a ratio. It is not just objectively these lifts are better because they're better. No, it's you pick the appropriate variation and use that. Now, something that I've really only ever heard natural hypertrophy talk about is the role of carryover pertaining to hypertrophy. Now, with strength, carryover is more important because the more of something that you can do, the more practice you get doing that thing, the better you get at it. With hypertrophy, the thing that you're looking to do is get fucking jacked, get 20-inch freaking arms. You're trying to get big. All we care about is movement patterns and not necessarily specific movements, not necessarily doing bench press every time we come in. You can do bench press every time you come in a hypertrophy program, so like bench press, spoto press, floor press, Larson press, whatever, but it's not needed. There only needs to be continuity in whatever the major muscles are between each session. So for example, for me, yesterday actually I did guillotine press. That is going to carry over hypertrophy wise to then when I do cambered bar bench press, and then when I do ring push-ups, and then when I do ring dips, because pecs, shoulders, and triceps are all major movements or muscle groups used in those movements rather. So they're going to carry over to one another because the hypertrophy stimulus is being stimulated, okay? That's all you need to worry about. You need to make sure that the main muscles are mainly getting worked between each movement, between each session. That's all. Now, some advanced hypertrophy strategies. We talked a little bit about some of them, but we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. In general, this is just a basic rule that I want y'all to start following or just to try. There's going to be a most hypertrophic part of the lift. For bench press, that's typically the bottom of the lift. For RDLs, again, the bottom of the lift. For squats, I found that it is like lowering once you get towards the mid-range and at the bottom. Just the lowering aspect of a squat. Milk that because a lot of people skip it. Start milking that and you're going to get a good result from it because a lot of people don't do that. It's like what separates a beginner and an advanced level bodybuilder, in my opinion. Johnny Bodybuilder. We're going to talk about self-limiting variations and then a lot of things that I think are really cool from programming compound lifts for strong guys that can do a lot of damage to a couple other cool things, starting with the self-limiting variations. This is specifically to maximize stimulus to the muscles and minimize fatigue. There's a DBZ analogy we're going to use again, okay? So Piccolo trains with weighted clothing on. When he takes the weighted clothing off, he becomes faster, stronger, his power level goes up because he trained harder. You're training with these lifts to give you a better training effect and to minimize fatigue. Piccolo can't move as fast with the clothes on, bro. So he's not inducing as much flying fatigue or whatever Dragon Ball Z stuff would happen. Some self-limiting variations that I like that limit the load, maximize muscle stimulus, and are really good that a lot of you guys love are the close grip Larson press, the stiff-legged deadlift, a tempo pause squat, and then a seated non-back supported overhead press. We talked a little bit about those the last time, but I really like these because they target the chest, posterior chain, legs, and shoulders preferentially and very well with the least amount of weight that you need to do so. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about programming lifts, particularly compound lifts for strong lifters. And this could be, listen, man, if you're the Incredible Hulk and you're bicep curling 400 pounds, maybe this could apply to a curl, but this is specifically for compound lifts, okay? Now, this is where a bit of personal experience recently is going to come into play, but when you get objectively stronger and more jacked over time, the amount of fatigue that you can develop with your volume work is substantial. So this is not for people that still bench 225. Okay, that's not to put you down. It's just to say that this is not a tool in your toolbox. Still listen to it, still at the watch time, okay, but this isn't something that you need at the moment, but it's something to keep in mind. I made that video saying at the time why I didn't bench press for a few months or whatever, and I gave my reasoning for it. What I found is when I started to want to include bench press again, it was kind of just to see where I was at. But one thing that I found is that although the stimulus is high and the fatigue is still higher than the ring work and the dumbbell exercises that I mentioned in that video, I have mitigated the impact that fatigue has on my recovery and the rest of my program by doing this, okay? Asynchronous, and that's the most gigabrain word you're ever going to hear come out of my mouth, but it basically means, look, bro, relating to a week, you're benching every 10 to 14 days instead of every week. So your bench day may fall on different days. It is going to fall on different days of the week every week. You're giving yourself more time for your joints and everything to recover in between sessions from the bench work that you did. Or it could be squats or deadlifts or whatever big compound lift that you're strong at that you want to include. That's the major thing I want to talk about. You can also include your self-limiting variations, but that's kind of like a gimme. Like you should be doing that already. That should just be obvious. If you're having trouble recovering from something, you use a self-limiting variation for hypertrophy. You can also pre-exhaust. And my buddy Sam Sheether put me on to someone. I feel bad for forgetting his name. He's a bodybuilder, and there was this workout that he did in his basement wherein he did like bench press and then pec flies and then dips. I'm saying you can pre-exhaust to use less weight on these compound lifts as well. Now, I want to talk a bit about isolation lifts pertaining to hypertrophy. These are purely developmental exercises. They are not, I'm going to swing this around to lift the most amount of weight possible to get the most amount of reps possible, because that's shitty form like we just talked about. This is where I said I jotted this down. But every exercise is a back exercise if you do it wrong enough, okay? That's just to say, man, like, look, these are exercises you use to get big muscles, not to be Sammy Sausage Head, Jimmy Green Bean, work out with the freaking 60s when you know you should be using the 30s, okay? Your progress comes from when you do everything properly. You're hitting all your metrics, and you're treating these lifts as seriously as your compound exercises. It's just a little gut check. Now, I talked a little bit about pre-exhaustion. Here's what it is. It's related to something that I call pre-activation, but these are both useful for getting a good stimulus, particularly and especially for fellas that say things like, I never feel my pecs on X, Y, and Z exercise. This is going to be for you, so listen up. It's also useful for reducing the weight needed on subsequent compound lifts, like we just said. Now, what is it? You literally just do an exercise that works a main mover on the compound movement or the movement that you would like to feel better. You're pre-exhausting it, because what I found is that when you pre-exhaust it, you feel it better on every other exercise you do, because it's pumped, it's engorged with blood. It might start to be, get a little achy. You can feel that muscle working, and you know when it's working and what positions and everything that you need to be in. Also, because that muscle is weaker, it has to work harder to contribute. And that sounds bro sciencey, but it has worked experientially for me for things like bench press for fellas. If you pre-exhaust with pec flies, if you feel like you don't feel your chest on bench, you're going to feel your chest on bench after that. Another way to achieve pre-exhaustion is through something really slept on. It's called agonist superset. So it's the opposite of antagonist. It means like the same thing. So first you're going to do bench press, and this is where that giant set comes into play that I got from Sam, who got it from a bodybuilder fella. You're going to need, regardless of the type of pre-exhaustion that you do, leave that ego out the window, because you're not going to be doing normal weights and reps and sets. The weights and everything are going to plummet quickly. So just keep that in mind. It's also something where, of course, if you're doing pre-exhaustion, as with anything, you shouldn't be benching without safeties, okay? especially since this, again, is an art and not a science. Some of you guys are going to need to see that, yeah, dude, I can hit 225 for 3 sets of 10. I'm going to pre-exhaust my pecs and then hit a 3x10 again. Dude, you're going to get like 7 and then 4 and then 3 reps. Some people have to fuck around and find out. Just have your safeties up. Now, pre-activation is similar, but a little different in that you're not totally exhausting the muscles. You're just feeling them, using them with something smaller to then be able to feel them on something bigger. Now, this is for fellas that may feel their pecs on pec flies, and they don't want to pre-exhaust it because they still want to perform well on bench. They just want to feel the pec work a little bit. They may find that if you just use it a little bit, you can feel it better on the bench press. So it's related strategies. It's just about the dosage. This is more of like an esoteric one, and I even wrote it here. I'm not even looking at it, but esoteric in that if I tell you to do 3 sets of 10 and to go to failure on each set of that, it almost doesn't sound right to some people. And on paper, it doesn't sound right because you can't go to failure on 10 and then do 10 again the same way that you just did 10. But that's the point. You're not doing each set and each rep the same way. You're making adjustments to your tempo throughout the set and between each rep in the set to make this possible. So you may start with like a quicker tempo for the first 8 or the first 6, and then you slow down on 7, and then you slow, and then you reach failure on 10. And then on the second set, you do the same thing, except for you may do more fast reps on the second set, and then do that last 2 really slow. You see what I'm saying? You can go to failure on a straight set of 3x10. This isn't something that I recommend for beginners. This is something for more advanced trainees that are working with a new exercise that they want to get a good feel for and want to get a good feel for like the ranges of motion that feel the best and the joint angles and what types of weights they can use on it while still getting in a good workout. Again, this is not for somebody that needs to just learn the basics. If you're still asking, what is progressive overload? It's not a self-evident question for everybody, but if you're asking that type of question, that is not for you. Now, to leave this off, I just want to talk a little bit about how I like to build each muscle for fellas that specifically feel like they don't feel anything working on the basic movement patterns. For pecs, rings. Some people hate that I love rings, and I love that. But rings are an incredible exercise for pecs, shoulders as well, actually, because they allow you to milk the stretch and maximize the squeeze. Both of those things are very important to getting big pecs, and the rings just happen to do both of those in a way that is foolproof. I'm not going to explain each and every one of these, just some of the notable ones. You can pause it and take a look. I've made videos about most of this, but just at a high level, what most of these things do is they take muscles and movement patterns and they pretty much just force those muscles and those movement patterns to do the damn thing, to get her done. So between the reach RDL, the ring pull-ups, to the freaking Dr. Mike style leg press, or throwing the kitchen sink at your calves, you're forcing your muscles, whether it's through effort with the cluster sets or the kitchen sink, or through positioning with the hack squats, to do the damn thing. These are my favorites. There you go. Now, speaking of cluster sets, they're fun. They're good for hypertrophy. They're good for building work capacity, so meaning they also have value for strength training. They're dense. They allow you to get in a lot of work in a little bit of time. And I really love using them for accessories and for calisthenics, particularly pertaining to hypertrophy, and not on big barbell compound movements for hypertrophy. We'll talk about cluster sets for strength in a sec. But for hypertrophy, I just don't recommend this type of cluster set for that, just simply because, a lot of people that are going to try this are beginners. Your form isn't the best, even if you're more advanced. when you're doing this type of cluster set, your form is going to break down. So you want to pick movements there. It's okay to do that. All right. Pause that, read it. That's exactly how you do it. But practically, you're just doing sets of 3 and 5 over and over again until, proverbially your arms fall off. And it's really just used to something to break the monotony, to break past the plateau if you've stalled on something. And you only ever use it for a few weeks at a time. A lot of people ask how to progress on these, dude. It's the same as anything else, man. You just add more quality reps. You add more reps in totality because you're not going to be doing sets of 5 across. If you're doing it right, it's going to be like 5, 5, 5, 4, fuck, 3, 3, 2, 1. You see what I'm saying? So you can always add a little bit more. Record yourself so you can see how many total reps you do. Now, a lot of people have questions about specialization in hypertrophy programs. Like, delt specialization program, please. A lot of people DM me about that all the time. They ask about the delt detonation protocol. Here's the thing. You don't need to specialize if you don't have a base of muscle. It's just me keeping it a buck with you, keeping it a stack. If you don't have a base of muscle, it is insane if you've been in the gym for 2 months to want to specialize on the size of your delts when you haven't even exhausted just adding a base of muscle to your frame. Some people that I respect may disagree with that. That may be the strength boomer side of me saying that you need to have a base before you specialize. But I truly believe hypertrophy-wise that, like, dude, it's like I'm not calling anybody a stick figure. It's just like if you take a stick figure and you draw big delts on it, you're not going to look super jacked. You'll have big delts, but it's like, what about every other muscle? So you build a base of muscle first. If you put a little bit of muscle on that stick figure and then added big delts, dude, he would be yoked. He would look crazy. It's a different story. You should know how to be generally proficient in the way that you move and how to stimulate muscle in general before you specialize. So all that needs to come before it. When you do want to specialize, you just follow a simple needs versus wants analysis again. The only difference is you're prioritizing certain muscles that you want to grow first. The main takeaway is you don't want your strong points to get weak. My strong points are my pecs, I'm speaking like before I brought everything up. Because my legs are big now. My arms are a lot nicer than they were. Legs are actually a strong point, I would say. My legs are pretty big. But before, they were not as big as I wanted them to be because I had hurt my back a long time ago and I just wasn't able to train my back, my lower body the way that I wanted in general. But my strong points at that time were my pecs, my back. Why would I neglect those things that are so ahead of the curve to then bring up weak points? Then I have more weak points. So keep your strong points strong and give it time, at least 6 months. I was specializing in these things for 18, 19, going on 20 months now. I'm still specializing. You need to give it time to be able to see and observe a substantial change. Now, I want to chat a little bit more about creating momentum, specifically things that you can do to create momentum in your strength training. These same things can kind of be applied to hypertrophy training in that you kind of just want to pace everything out so that it's the difference between, okay, we'll use an analogy actually. I'm pretty sure I might have jotted this down. I'm not even looking at it. I'm looking into the sky right now, but it's the difference between, look, man, you either sprint, but at the end of that sprint, you got to tackle some dude hard as hell, right? Or you can jog and pace yourself, and then towards the end of your jog, when you see the fella, you tackle him hard as hell. I didn't want to use the battering ram analogy again, but the same can be said of a battering ram. You need to be able to take time to build up speed and maintain it over time to siege a castle wall or knock a fella over. If you're starting off with going hard in the paint, you have nowhere to go after that, so you have to pace yourself. Number one way to create momentum in your training, to facilitate productive sessions that don't hurt you. If you get hurt, how are you going to progress in your training? Maintain a standard of form. Don't let yourself become a Snap City resident, okay? You maintain your standard of form. You stay honest with your rest times. You don't add reps or performance by resting 20 minutes between your sets, because that's not the same thing as doing the same sets and reps with 3 to 5 minutes rest. Also, if you're grinding on week 1 or week 2 or week 3 or anywhere else other than when you test your strength, you're wrong and you're doing too much. It just is what it is. Gosh. Now, advanced strength training principles and strategies. I'm going to get into a little bit of each of these because they're more advanced and they're honestly pretty simple. Starting with the asynchronous training. This is what I like to call the 8 extended training day split. So you're going beyond 7 days. It could be 8 days. It could be 9, 10, 11, 12. I personally follow a 10 to 11 day split for my particular program. That's really good because it gives you extra rest. Simple as. You could literally take a standard upper lower, add an extra rest day, and there it is. It's asynchronous. The only difference is you're getting more rest. Now, specifically talking about something I like to call 1.5 times frequency. It's really good for when you can't recover from doing compound lifts, that same compound lift or variations of it multiple times per week. It's where you're filling in with a variation that is less specific or so self-limiting that it's not really the same thing, but it's close enough and it'll allow you to get some extra practice in. You could pause that. There are my favorite 1.5 times combinations. Now, let's just say that not only can you not deadlift multiple times per week, you can't do a whole lot of deadlifting in one session, or you can't do a whole lot of squatting or benching in one session because of lower back fatigue. That's the commonality between the three of these. Bench absolutely, I don't care what anybody thinks about this, bench absolutely fatigues the hell out of your lower back if your setup is tight and proper for strength training. Bench is a very uncomfortable lift if you're doing it properly for strength, okay? That comes with a lot of lower back fatigue. That will affect you if you're squatting and deadlifting. It just is what it is. But what I like to do is you take your top set, you do it with your whatever compound you want to get stronger, and your back offs will be with a self-limiting variation. Those are the ones that I like to use the most. The Hatfield squat I haven't used as much, but I do really like it for. The cool thing with Hatfield squats is that you can pull yourself through your sticking point or whatever part of the squat range of motion is fatiguing you the most. So you can pull yourself through the mid-range, through the very bottom, through the very top. It just depends. So it's really good for a lifter pulling themselves through their particular sticking point. And that's why I like it in certain occasions. I don't really use it as much as heel elevated squats, but I do see the use in it. Now, I mentioned cluster sets for strength. Here's how we do it. Here's why we do it. We'll talk about that. You can pause it and read that how you do it. We're going to talk about the why and what it's good for. It's great for tertiary work. Here's that gigabrain word again. Meaning it's good if you have like a third day where you want to get some extra practice in. Or you can use it on a main day during your warm-ups or your workup to a hard top set because it's really good for priming your nervous system. You're getting in a lot of good quality, good form reps because the weight is light enough that you're able to have a perfect setup and you're able to feel what those good positions feel like. And it's also light enough that doing all this quote-unquote volume in terms of sets and reps isn't going to fatigue you so much. Now, last thing before we move into the last few talking points relating to power building and marrying strength and hypertrophy is build your freaking weak link, bro. You have a compound lift that you suck at. For me, it's overhead press. I'm strong at bench. I'm strong at deadlift. I'm strong at squats. I'm strong at rows. I'm strong at pulls. I'm strong at a bunch of isolation lifts. Overhead press, I've never overhead pressed more than 100 keys. It just is what it is. It's a lift that is so behind the curve that I felt that I need to bring it up. So I'm building it. What this will ultimately lead to, whether you are training for strength or hypertrophy, is better long-term muscle gains, because a weak link is a huge area of opportunity that is going to bleed over into a lot more than you think it will. A weak overhead press on bench can potentially mean your shoulders not engaging well with the bench, meaning the bar path might get fucked up. You might not be able to bring the bar back over where it needs to be in line during lockout because your shoulders are weak. So your pecs and your shoulders better be ahead of the curve so you can attempt to do that. But if you just had a 250-pound freaking overhead press, this is me yelling at myself, that wouldn't be the issue. You'll get stronger on stuff you care about if you build your weak links. For a lot of people, the common weak lifts are just stuff that isn't really popular on social media, honestly. So it's like incline bench, overhead press, things of that nature. Those are the two most common ones. Now, I want to talk a little bit about marrying both size and strength. Here's the truth of it. You cannot separate the two because they are causally linked. And that word causal is very Berserk appropriate because Skull Knight says it all the time. This is cryptic ass shit. The most cryptic shit, and then just trolleys off on his horse. And he uses the word causal a lot. Can't remove the two. As you get stronger, you get bigger, and as you get bigger, you get stronger. Anything that makes you stronger will get you bigger. Anything that gets you bigger will make you stronger. It's yin and yang. You cannot remove the two from one another. But that being said, if you try to chase both as hard as you can, you're going to get inferior results. You're going to be running in circles. But you can make considerations in your strength training for hypertrophy and vice versa. And here's how you do it. This is the real talk. I just made a video talking about this, but here was the main idea. In your strength training, you need to get bigger muscles to lift bigger weights. The work that you do for hypertrophy, you can approach it the same way a bodybuilder would. You're just not going to be able to do as much of it because you don't have as much training economy. Your slots are filled up with strength training movements and strength training progression that needs to be respected, because you can't recover from a full optimal strength training workout and a full optimal bodybuilding workout. You just can't. It's not possible. The human body cannot do that, even with performance enhancing drugs. You can do greater proportions of bodybuilding depending upon what your genetics are like, but in general, you're not going to be able to do as much as if you focused on just that thing. Now, for hypertrophy, this is where that strength training comes into play. I talked a little bit earlier about how my overhead press was a little weak, very weak from my bench. I feel as though if you pick one strength training movement, you can fit that into an hypertrophy program the same way that you could fit some bodybuilding work into a strength program. It's literally the same thing. You just can't have a bunch of it because then it starts to dominate your program. The same way bodybuilding work would dominate the strength program if you did too much of it. And that's the real talk of it. Also, well-performed strength training is going to get you bigger than shitty hypertrophy training all day, every day, and vice versa. So just aim to do what you do well and know that you're going to do some of it on each. Now, to top her off before we leave off with volume and then get into the Berserk Manifesto, we're going to talk a little bit about movement prep. We all know what winning warm-ups are. If you don't, Google it. He didn't come up with the idea of it. It's just a cool name that he coined. But it's basically where you lift a light weight on an extended range of motion of whatever lift you're about to train for a lot of reps. You get a low-grade pump, not a giga pump. It's just you're warming up, bro. Don't overthink it. What I want to talk about is an extension of something that I've talked about in the past, which is using movements as bridges to allow you to do other movements. I talked about a full elbow health protocol in the last self-coaching video, and I have, subsequently talked about it in future, videos after that, all right? So on a high level, you start off with band press downs. After so many weeks of doing that, let's just say you have elbow pain and that's why you're doing this. After so many weeks, you do tricep rope push downs and band press downs. After so many weeks, you do 2 sessions of tricep rope push downs. And then eventually you find that your elbows can tolerate skull crushers, provided that you do rope push downs first in the program. The same thing can be applied, in my experience, to your knees. So with the knees particularly, you can start off with, and this isn't medical advice, so you consult your doctor if you know, with any new exercise that you do. But what I found is that you can prepare your knees to be more resilient than they were alongside your elbows or your hips. It's just been my experience. With the knees particularly, it's a similar line of thought. You start off with Spanish squats with a band. Google it. You do those 2-3 times a week. Then you add in leg extensions and Spanish squats. A session of Spanish squats, a session of leg extensions. Then you do leg extensions twice per week. It's following the same progression as that tricep example I just laid out until you get to the point where you can now put your knees over your toes more when you squat and on your squatting variations. Provided that you do your leg extensions first as a warm-up or earlier in the program. That's if you're a fella that has knees that are a little banged up or you find that they're sensitive to volume on things like that. Same thing with kettlebell swings, except for this is actually a little bit faster, I found. You don't need to follow a bunch of intermediate steps leading up to this. You can just do some kettlebell swings in your warm-up and then go right into hip hinges, and your hips will usually feel fine. If you need to, you can do what the knees over toes guy has coined as reverse squats with a cable or psoas curls. But there are ways that you can bridge to movements that are harsher that you think are impossible. And I've used each of those things to great benefit in my training personally. Now, a quick word on volume. Some truisms. There's no optimal sets or reps per week. That's it. That's the truism. Pause it. Read that. That's exactly the prescription that you can use to start off with. But the main thing is what I'm going to talk about and spend some time talking about, is that before you add any more volume than what you're doing now, make sure that what you're doing is of quality. Maximize before you add more. It's like min-maxing. Have you played Dark Souls before? You know Giant Dad? The Giant Dad build? You maximize what you get from the stat points that you're allocating before you add more stat points, okay? Now the Berserk Manifesto. You've had your time to, read what the basic volume prescriptions are, the amount of exercises that you can start off with at a minimum, but just know there's no optimal volume. But we're going to talk about a little bit of the nitty-gritty of the Berserk Method. Now, this is something that is going to be very valuable for fellas. Selecting exercises is the toughest thing for a lot of newer lifters or even really strong guys that I know to do. Think about it again of cost versus benefit. What am I trying to do? What does it cost to do this? Is it worth it? You want to think of movements also categorically. If you look at a bench press and a dip and an incline bench and every horizontal or horizontalish press as being a horizontal press, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to try it and see how it works for you. Once you have those categories, you fill those categories and you train. You audit yourself. You see how this is the needs versus wants analysis? You're doing the exact same thing. The needs versus wants analysis is immutably important, and we're using it yet again. Am I using proper form? How does this feel? How does it feel when I use improper form versus proper form? These are things that you need to keep in mind, and these are going to be what helps you determine what movements are staples, and movements that feel consistently great are the ones that you're going to want to keep as staples. Now, keep this in mind as well. Once you find your staples, Those are the exercises outside of those staples that I just shared with you. So you're already way ahead of the curve, bro. Half of your program is already selected. You're just figuring out odds and ends at this point. You're keeping a little bit of your program open. Something I call the 80-20 rule. I talked about this in the past. You keep a little bit open to trying new things. I keep a little bit of my program fluid. It might be different every other week because I'm trying different techniques, different movements, different volumes, different reps and sets to see what feels good. I have most of what I need in my program at the moment figured out. But we always want to give a little play in the joints to figure out new things, new staples, and being open to knowing more because nobody knows everything, not even about themselves, specifically pertaining to exercise selection and what's going to work well for you. Now, once you have your staples, you look at finding variations of those staples. So, for example, staple exercise for me is pull-ups. I can do regular pull-ups, I can do chin-ups, I can do neutral grip pull-ups, so on and so on. There are going to be some close variation that is different enough so that your joints aren't getting overused in the exact same position, but they're giving a similar result. This is another big one, and something that I may have an unpopular opinion on. Maybe this isn't so unpopular, but a lot of people wonder when they can swap out exercises, or rather when they need to. I don't think it's as often as many people say it is. You absolutely can't just do the same thing over and over again so often that it hurts you, because no shit, bro, it's hurting you. It's overuse. It's an overuse injury. I feel like we can use an example where this is going to prove my point. If we take a lift, like, for example, let's say we're squatting every 12 days or 14 days or whatever, because we squat 600 pounds and we just don't want to squat that often, and we don't need to. We just kind of want to use it as a hypertrophy exercise because we just kind of feel like it. Do I need to swap the squat out after 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks? Or can I keep it in longer than that? I have a whole 14 days before I have to squat again. Do I have to swap it out? No, I don't. Now what do I do if, I'm doing a particular lift once a week, but I'm training like we'll use, again, legs, for example. I have squats, then I have leg press, and then I have hack squats. Do I have to switch out hack squats every 3 weeks just because it's been 3 weeks and I need to change my You see what I'm saying? Like, we're doing the hack squat once a week. There's no reason for us to need to change it out as often as we think we do. That's just my opinion. That's how I'm articulating my opinion. But if you want a good, safe starting point, 6 to 8 weeks is a good starting point. You may find, and I have found, that I can go much longer without changing something. I've gone 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 15 weeks without changing an exercise and made steady progress on it, and really only changed it because I stopped making progress after a lot longer than people said I'd be able to. And you may find, and I want you to be open to that as well, provided that you have high exercise selection and you're literally not just going bench press, bench press, bench press, bench press, or incline curl, incline curl, incline curl, or doing the same thing so often to where your body has no rest or recuperation away from that particular thing. I find that you can keep it in pretty long. Don't just change shit because you get bored. This dragon art is immaculate. This is from, I believe it was right after, no spoilers for Berserk, but I feel like it's sometime after, in the middle of the Conviction art, I think. It might be at the beginning of the Millennium Falcon arc. I almost gave y'all a spoiler, just in case no one read it yet, and this awesome art has enticed you to read the series. This is where the dragon art is from. But something that makes the Berserk Method special is the high priority that I put on back, and that we put on back, fellas that I work with. Back will always be a focus because a big back means you're big and strong, and you can't hide a big back. And how we accomplish that is that we hit it from every angle. There's 3 main angles that you can hit with your back in general. It's your horizontal and your vertical. Those are obvious. But the newer one, like the more meta one right now, is the diagonal pull. That comes into play with like your ghetto pull downs from Alex Leonidas and, you know, your high to low rows. We'll talk a little bit more about things that I like for each particular angle. But because you're hitting it from every angle, you're developing it from every angle. Now, practically, how we do this and how we accomplish this is that every press that we do, we're doing a pull somewhere, whether that's on an upper lower, we're doing freaking back work every time we're in the gym, or on a full body. You may do the same thing, you know, like a beginner full body, like a strong lifts 5x5 or something. You're doing rows or chin-ups every time you go to the gym, I think. Most of those programs are like that. Or even on an advanced full body like my own, there's a way that you do that, and we'll talk about that in a sec when we talk about my program. But I don't necessarily do pulls on the day that I press, but I'm doing them sometime in that week, and they're in a specific proportion. Now, these are my favorite back exercises, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. These are the ones that I like using the most and that I prescribe the most. They're good because they're low skill, they do what you need to do, and they look cool. Something that I feel is really slept on, even in my own training, honestly, is the pullover. I don't do it particularly because here's the truth of the pullovers. A lot of people feel like this is bro science, but I really truly do feel like they do what people say they do. Like they expand your rib cage and they make you broader. I don't find that I need that because even in bulking for well over a year and a half now, I have a 30.5 inch waist. You know what I'm saying? When I was at my lowest weight of whatever it was, 169, like peeled, I had like a 28-inch waist. I just don't gain very much weight on in my core or on my abs. I'm mostly gaining on my limbs, like my legs and my arms, my love handles, things like that. And I have wide shoulders as well. Like I have a wide collarbone. So I don't feel the need aesthetically to do that, but it absolutely will have a profound effect on the way that your upper body looks. So I would just look like a one piece a one piece character pretty much if I did pullovers. Maybe that's a look I'll explore. We got our boy Zod finally, other than the intro card. But something that I really like that is key to the Berserk method are your floater exercises. This is going to include core work, but it can also include anything like, you know, neck, forearms, calves, things that people will typically skip if they don't make sure to do it this way. And this stops us from skipping it. And floater just basically means something that is small enough that you can superset it with anything in your program, including another floater exercise, as long as it isn't a big movement like a bench, a deadlift, a squat. So like you're not supersetting deadlifts with freaking ab work because you need your abs on deadlift to brace. You don't want to fatigue that muscle group. Now, what I believe in wholeheartedly above anything else, fuck forearms, fuck calves, those are all. This is opinion too, but this is more so like it just makes sense to the vast majority of people, even people that just have a tangential. Whatever the word is, you're loosely aligned with lifting weights. The word escaped me. Everybody likes a rock solid core. All right? You work your core every time you go to the gym. No questions asked, no exceptions. It doesn't matter what program you're following. You could watch this entire video and decide to run a fucking push-pull legs. You better be working your abs every time you go to the gym. Is what it is. Now, regardless of what your floater exercise is, you're going to treat it seriously. You're going to be serious about progression. You're going to be serious about quality form. You're going to be serious about doing these movements. You're not going to do it I'm going to do it at home, bro. I'm going to wait till I'm going to wait till the end of the program. I'm going to hit my calves. No, you're not. No, you're not. You do it in the middle of your workout. You superset it with something, and that's what we do. Here are my favorite floater exercises. I really got to give my boy Herso the freaking credit for the neck harness work because he made me excited about doing this, and I've been having a lot of fun with it, honestly. I really like neck harness work just because I feel like, particularly for like the back of your neck, those muscles, it could be harder to work that with plates. And I feel like in general, just being able to load something up onto a chain, it's a much larger loading capacity past when like you can no longer hold like a freaking 245-pound plates. It becomes more of a grip exercise. Something that you can do to mitigate that is if you have actually bumper plates, particularly the ones that are like, they have a texture to them. You know what I'm talking about. If you've ever touched a bumper plate before, they'll kind of stick to one another and they kind of have like, what's the word I'm looking for? They have a lot higher traction. So they don't move side to side as much. You could do that somewhat to mitigate the grip, but even with that, how many freaking bumper plates are you going to hold, bro? You can't hold more than like 2 of them. You see what I mean? So you're going to want a neck harness eventually. And then also, a lot of this stuff I've been good with. The neck work and the towel work is new for me. Anything where I'm gripping a towel or you're gripping a towel has been really fun. Towel pull-ups are brutal. They're probably my favorite. I've experimented a little bit with some curls with the towel, but I really like pull-ups with the towel. Now, this is just a little arm training tidbit for you guys. I just said tidbit again. You know what, man? Berserk Method video over. Anyway, arm training template. Here's how I like to lay it out. This could be on an arm day. This could be, for me specifically, I'll do a couple exercises and then do this. I like 2 exercises for biceps, 2 for triceps. It's 2 and 2. You have 1 curl where you get a stretch, 1 where you work your brachialis and your forearms. Then you have your press down and your extension, and you're going with anywhere between 2 and 5 sets each, and you're doing that 1 to 2 times every 7 days. Now, I think I do this in my program. I'd have to look at it, but I think I'm working my arms out of 5 sessions, 4 of them. But I run a 10-day split, so I'm following that once every 7 days rule, at least close enough to it. But if you're following an upper lower, doing this 1 to 2 times a week on your upper body workouts, you can't go wrong with that. Or maybe once on an upper body workout, and then once on an arm day, you're going to be good to go. If you're new to this, maybe start with 1 day, because it can be a lot of volume to recover from if you've never trained your arms before. But everybody can work up to doing this. I find that this exact combination works everything from your long head of your triceps, is where you get that football action when you flex your arm. When you do a bicep flex, that long head makes that look more aesthetic and adds a lot of size to your arm. Your brachialis also adds a lot of that width and that pop to your arm as well, which I feel is really slept on. I feel my brachialis is ahead of the pack, wherein I still need a lot of work on my biceps and triceps, in my opinion, or there's a lot greater of a capacity for them to grow. But they were ahead of the pack from doing like pull-ups and things of that nature, because the pull-ups work the brachialis really well, particularly. Now, I want to talk a little bit about conditioning. I talked a little bit about this in the non-training variable section. Conditioning. A lot of people worry about doing too much. Here's where you can start to include elements of it without having to add things like sprinting and everything else that you can do for conditioning. And then I'll talk about ways that you can add it that are easier to recover from. Needs and wants. Okay? Do you want to be a sprinter, or do you want to be a Johnny bodybuilder? If you want to be a Johnny bodybuilder, you assess your needs first, and if you have room for your wants, you address them intelligently. The good news is most people have more room for conditioning than they think. Easy ways to add conditioning to your program is to just stay honest with your rest intervals. How you do that is you literally set a timer for 2 minutes and you stay true to that. When it's time to get 2 minutes, you should already be getting up to do your set when that freaking timer says 20 seconds left, so that when you're laying down or you're in the squat rack, you're ready to go. You know, you're ready for war. That's what you need to do. That's one thing. If you're resting less, you'll find that you're fatiguing your cardio a lot more. Also, on the Berserk method, we have always superset a lot. Supersets have always been something that I really enjoyed. It was just that giant set faux pas that our boy Natural Hypertrophy talked to me about. But I've always really liked supersets for conditioning. It's really easy to include in your program, whether it be through agonist or antagonist supersets. Antagonist supersets are more practical because you can maintain performance between exercises better. Whereas on an agonist exercise, you're really doing that if, in my opinion, you have a stubborn muscle group that you're really trying to stimulate and you can't feel it otherwise. But either is going to be good for work capacity and building conditioning because they're going to get you breathing, they're going to get you moving, they're going to get you sweating. Of course, high activity levels daily. You should be maintaining that step count. That's just assumed. Now, all that out the way, this is like a deep lore for the OGs of the channel. You remember the assault bike chads? That might be like completely left field for a new subscriber. But the assault bike chad was like, dude, he mogged me into oblivion. I haven't seen him since. If you're an OG, let me know if you remember that mogging that he fucking delivered to me. But if you happen to have an assault bike, or let's just say an elliptical or a regular ass exercise bike, you can do interval sprints on that, and it's going to be restorative to your joints, restorative to your muscles. The big thing with like running is that most people, myself included, and I'm pretty fast. I've got like sprinter legs and leverages. I don't know how to run properly though, and many people that want to do conditioning don't know how to run. Sprinting on a bike, you're on a fixed machine. The machine is doing the moving for you. You're just giving it energy and moving your legs. It's easier on your hips and on all your joints while still giving you a good conditioning effect. And it's driving blood into your muscle tissues, which is giving you a good bang for your buck on recovery as well. All those things said, you just have to make sure that you're eating your calories back as well. Now, rings. That was actually the last thing before I talk about how to structure my training. We got the big jawline, Chad guts, to highlight that particular section. Now, rings are something that I have included in the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 months. I'd always known of them. This is just from just seeing different dudes on YouTube and watching YouTube for years, man. I've been watching since the Hodge twins, all right? You just see random guys lifting weights on YouTube sometimes because you get recommended a video or whatever, and you just see them using rings. I've seen it from that. I've seen it from our boy Alex talking extensively about rings. Never really bought into it. And so, funny story, bro. Here's the thing. I was just like, man, I'm going to just buy these rings and try them out just to see how they worked out of pure curiosity. I had a passing thought of, dude, I'm going to buy these rings on sale. I tried them, and you remember when Squidward took a bite of the Krabby Patty and he freaking like fell in love with Krabby Patties? That was me, and that was rings. Here's why. Rings give you the most bang for your buck. They allow you to get a cost-effective implement that allows you to simulate many classic movements that everyone loves and that everyone has found to be immutably effective since time immemorial in the weight room. They can simulate an extended range of motion with the pecs. That's your dumbbell presses. That's better than the way most people do dumbbell presses, because most people, when they do dumbbell presses, their form is shit and they're doing half reps and they're just not doing it right. Also, you can do decline and incline work with the rings to simulate your incline and decline dumbbell bench. Fellas can even do high incline work to simulate, your seated dumbbell military press. There are a lot of things that you can do upper body wise with rings pertaining to pressing that my rings cost like $30, bro. And I've used them every day or every week since I've gotten them. Okay. I'm never not going to use them. They're also really effective for back training. A lot of these movements, whether it be through pulling or pushing, align you the same way mechanically that a lot of these biomechanics guru lifts align you. The difference being is that these lifts are so much more stimulative, I have found. And they look cooler, and I don't look like a fucking dork doing them, and you won't look like a dork doing them. You look like a Chad, man. I'm not sponsored by anyone that freaking sells rings, but get some rings, man. They're cheap. They'll add a lot of utility to your program. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how I structure my training on a high level, and then give y'all some resources, because we've talked a lot about what is Scott Herman. I summoned the Boston accent for a second. I don't know what happened right there. I need a drink of water. I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal program on a high level, and then refer you to some resources, because we've talked a lot about the ins and outs, the nitty gritty, different things. We're almost at the end. I'm going to talk about my personal program. It's full body. I love full body training. I feel like full body training is something that honestly is just the move for natural lifters. Full body training it's fun. It allows you to hit every muscle or most muscles in your upper and lower body at the same time, so your body is recovering mostly at the same time. It lets you do high volumes of isolation movements. It forces you, honestly, to be good at programming. So it's a good learning experience as well. It's not the best. It's not the only way to do things, but it's what I'm finding success with currently. And what, we can look at fellas like my boy Soviak. We can look at Silver Age bodybuilders. A lot of them trained full body. Steve Reeves trained full body at a point in his career. Got great results from it. I have 5 sessions. At least a day of rest most times between those sessions. It may be 2. That's where it can end up being anywhere between 10 and 12 days before I finish all 5 workouts. It's mostly hypertrophy biased, but I have some strength training in it for the overhead press, because it's a weak point and because it's fun to overhead press. For strength, particularly, because I'm weak at it. And getting stronger is fun. But it is very high volume. The volumes that I do on pulling, particularly, is not what most of y'all could recover from, even some of the stronger fellas, just because my back is very ahead of the curve, and I need to train it differently to progress it for me. That might not be the same for you if with an equal amount of development, but for me, that's what I need. So I'll do something like, I'll do like 7 sets of pulls on the rings, and then the day after that, I'm hitting heavy RDLs and then some heavy bent over rows with no rest days in between the 2 of those. And that's just what I found works well for me and what I need for me. I also do really high volumes of arm work and pretty high volumes of everything. It's something that I've trained myself to do. It's not something that I could start off doing. I've always said in the past that I hate high volume. I could never do this. I remember talking about that on Dr. Dave McConey's podcast once. I hated high volume. Well, training myself to be able to do high volume helped make me a lot bigger. So there we go. Because it's high volume, it also challenges my work capacity, but it's also super fun. So if you're interested in running a watered down version of that, there's a link for it in the description. You can also follow along with me on that as well, because I have my exact program uploaded onto there. Now, that is on Patreon, but the benefit is that 1, you're getting a program that is similar to what I run, and 2, you can follow along with me. I'm eventually going to release that for free, but I want to break down each and every individual session on YouTube with a video first before I do that. But if you're interested, there are enough resources there for the inquiring mind to run it. I just want to have as much available for fellows before I release it publicly to like thousands of people. Now, my free templates are my strength and my hypertrophy programs. Make a copy of them. They're free, but you got to make a copy of them. You can't edit it until you make a copy of it. But they're great for all experience levels. And just like with that full body program, I do make updates to these every so often. So make sure that you save that original link as well and check it every so often. Or every so often shoot me a message and say, hey, have you made a change to this or not? I guess I should have like a change log. That'd be a good idea. Note to self. But they are customizable. So you are going to be able to do more volume on this, less volume on that, more of this, less of that, and specialize it to what you need. But I have it set so that it's pretty general, right? That being said, I said, please laughing my ass off. Please read the FAQ, man. Please. It says must read FAQ. Please do not ask me a question that is in that FAQ. If you ask me a question that's in that FAQ, I'm going to get mad, but I'm still going to answer it, but I'm going to get mad still, bro. Read that FAQ, please. It covers everything from what does this mean to what does that mean to how to change this to how to edit the spreadsheet to customize it. It answers a whole lot. It's very comprehensive, and it's built off of questions that I got from fellas from my Patreon because I tested it there as well to get their questions to add to the FAQ. That being said, it is designed to guide you. It is a template, obviously, and you could run it as written and get good results without changing anything. But it's designed to guide you and to teach you how to make those changes. So use what you've learned in this video so far, along with the resources in that program, to make the program that is perfect for you. All right? Fellas reach out to me all the time saying the great gains that they make on these programs. They reach out to me all the time asking about, is this a good program? And the number one thing that I say to them is, we'll run it for a little bit and then come back to me and we can talk after that. And invariably, once they experiment a little bit and trust themselves, they don't need my feedback. They can help themselves. And I genuinely believe that each and every one of you can help yourselves as well. Link is in the description for you. Now, this is where we expand a little bit more on what you'll need to coach yourself and what will be the last portion of this video. Quick self-audit checklist. This is really quick. It's very simple. It's yes or no questions along with some simple considerations. Am I nailing my non-training variables? No, I'm not. You're fucking up. Am I getting the most out of my volume? Am I using good form? Am I trying hard enough? Am I using appropriate effort? Am I trying too hard if I'm training on strength training program? Yeah, I'm going to failure on week 1. You're fucking up. All of these things, and this is particularly pertaining to when you stop making progress, which is what we're going to address in just a second. When you reach a plateau in your training or you just stop making progress, 9.9999999 times out of 10, other than if it's an injury, it's an area of opportunity, or it's something you're not doing that is within your control. I don't want you to feel helpless or to feel like the reason for your lack of results is anything that is outside of your control. It just takes a little bit of accountability and this simple checklist to troubleshoot that. That's the low-hanging fruit. Speaking of low-hanging fruit, how to break plateaus. Like I said, they're going to come. You're going to stop making progress on something. I stopped making progress on stuff. You can't be absolutely on point with everything. Or if you're on point with the basics, you're not going to see things from every angle or do things optimally from every angle because we're not perfect. You don't have to train perfectly to get good results. You just have to train most things, specifically your non-training shit, stellar, okay? But you don't have to do everything right. They're always because of something that you can control, and that's the empowering part. It isn't something that you have to, oh man, there's nothing I can do. I guess this is my limit. No, it's like I can do this a little bit differently. But make sure that before you do anything like add a ton more volume or change your program or switch programs, make sure you're picking your low-hanging fruits first. Go back to that checklist, read it again, ask yourself those questions again. Are you doing those things? If you're not, there you go. Do that first. After that, you're going to want to look at what you're not doing or what your weakest link is. This means literally going in your training log, and maybe you take notes or something like that. And maybe on your tricep work, you're consistently leaving reps on the table for your press downs and your extensions because it gets difficult to grind those reps out. Or maybe your reps are super fucking sloppy week to week and your bench is stalling or your overhead press is stalling, even on a hypertrophy program. But everything else is okay. Everything else is on point. But that tricep work right there is where you're a little lackadaisical. You attack that, you're going to start making results again. So attack that weak link. But most of all, bro, give it time. And when you attack these weaknesses, maintain the same level of process that you had with everything else. And be patient. This is a gut check. This is another gut check for you fellas. This is a gut check for me sometimes. Not most of these anymore, actually. Actually, none of them. Other than maybe the last one for diet. I'll be eating sometimes. Not so much anymore, actually, but I enjoy a good gigabulk sometimes. A little gigabulk meal. But all jokes aside, these are common lifter mistakes and how to fix them. I call it a gut check because the solution is simple. Changing your program too often. How many people do that? You change your program too often, you're never going to make forward progress. How do you prevent that? Commit to your program. That comes into play with not following a plan. If you're just going to the gym doing whatever the fuck, how are you making progress? What you don't track, you can't manage, and what you're not managing, you're not progressing with. You're more than likely not some genetic top alien phenom, champion of Earth motherfucker that can go to the gym, do some push-ups, and then one day, yeah, dude, I benched 500 pounds the first time I touched a barbell. No, man, you got to follow a plan and work hard to get to that. You just follow a plan, any plan. The free programs that I just linked to you, those are a good place to start. This is a really important one. Form not matching your goal. So let's just say that you want an exercise to get you bigger, but you're performing it as if you want to lift the most amount of weight possible. You're fucking up, and you need to audit that. I have the optimal written in like the y'all know that meme. I think it was from like 2017 or 18, where it's like SpongeBob. He has like the ugly ass face and the upper and lowercase letters. I'm terrible at describing shit, but I'm terribly good. Does that make sense? Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. But I put optimal because here's the thing, man. If you seek to be optimal in your exercise selection in the way that a lot of these pencil necks talk about, you're missing the forest for the trees, and that you're excluding a lot of things that you feel like aren't worth your while because you're doing this optimal exercise. When really, these optimal exercises should just be an adjunct to everything else that you're doing. You're going to try or do most exercises at least once at some point, and most of them have merit or valuable or are valuable. Not every tool in the toolbox is one that's worthwhile. I'm not saying that, but there is so much more than just the cable thingamajig, whatever the fucks that these people talk about. A lot more. I don't do any of that shit. Speaking of, doing everything wrong outside the gym. This is the most common one. This is just me being honest. Most fellas that reach out and ask questions, a lot of times they don't know about strength training or hypertrophy training concepts, which is what this video is for. But then when I inquire as to how much they eat or their sleeping habits or things of that nature, things that have nothing to do with the gym, there's always a huge area of opportunity. Always. And it's almost always that fellas with terrible genetics, they're not doing these things. You could have great genetics, bro, but if you're not feeding yourself, you're never going to know that you could be Hercules. Okay? Like, you can't look at someone's physical state when they're doing everything wrong and use that as a metric to judge if they have good genetics or not. It's absurd. Rant aside, avoiding doing difficult things is less common, I would say, because most people that, especially, dude, if you've been watching for 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're okay with doing difficult things. But sometimes we avoid exercises that we know we should be doing and that would make us better because we suck at them. And that's more so what I'm referring to. For me, for a long time, it was for front squats. For you, it could be squatting in fucking general. It could be anything that you're avoiding. Some people have strong lower bodies, but they suck at upper body shit, so they never do it, or they only post deadlifts or post squats or whatever lower body lift they're good at. Maybe you should bench press, bro. How about that? Maybe some rings. How about some freaking dumbbell overhead press? How about that? Do the things that you're not as great at, and you'll feel a lot better about doing those things. It just is what it is. When you're it's the 3 C's, I like to say. You have your courage, you have your competence, and then you have your confidence. I got that from Brandon Carter back in the day. You have the courage to try something that you're not good at. You build competence, strength, size with those things. And then when you have strength and size, you have the confidence to do those things. It's a sequential order, and you can apply it to so many different things in your life. Now, following trends it comes into play with changing your program too much, man. You can't every time you watch a reel on TikTok or Instagram completely overhaul your program, because how many reels are you going to watch in a day, bro? If you're at risk of completely uplifting your shit every time you watch a reel, you need to cut that out and just commit to what you're doing. Last but not least is overcompensating in diet and training. And this is the least common, I would say, but still pretty common nonetheless, wherein people overcompensate in deficits with their training by overeating, by gigabulking. So they train like shit, but they eat a lot, and they use that as a crutch to progress in their training. Or fellas that ain't eating enough, but they somehow think that doing more volume or going harder or less rest days is going to make up for the fact that they eat 2,000 calories or they eat 20 grams of protein a day. Don't do that. These last things before I give y'all some closing thoughts and just express some gratitude. We're going to get a little mushy. Music, atmosphere, and then overall confidence that we build through something called image training. This is a little more esoteric. That's why we're leaving it off for the end. But in terms of music, you should have your PR songs. You should have your music that you listen to specifically when you're doing like a heavy lift. You're trying to get excited. You're trying to get into the move. Music has a very profound effect on all life forms on Earth, whether it be human babies, animals. Listen, guys, I don't really, not every study you read is like reflective of reality, but I've read studies where like you play music to fucking plants and then they grow differently. I don't know how like valid that is, bro, but like all I'm saying is music affects human beings and life on Earth in a way that isn't just as simple as the notes that you hear. It's how you feel when you listen to it. It's why you can listen to a song that is in a totally different language, and the lyrics of that song can make you feel a certain way if you don't even understand what they're saying. They could be talking about some metal ass shit, but if it sounds sappy, you're gonna be like, this is a sad song. You see what I mean? That needs to be taken into consideration with your playlist. You also should only have lift specific genres. In my opinion, you shouldn't be listening to certain types of shit unless you're lifting weights or training or practicing something that's important to you. You want to associate these songs and these playlists with that thing so that you can get activated when you do that thing. That's just my opinion and been my experience. Now, in terms of atmosphere, You're going to be around people that are bullshitting. You're going to be around people that are serious about shit. How you need to set things up internally with yourself is you need to be present in what you're doing. Here's something that I learned, again, through the military. We talked a little bit about a compartmentalization strategy that I learned. You need to be present in what you're doing, because the truth of the matter is that in life, you're going to be in some fucked up set of circumstances, depending upon, one, where you're at, two, what you're, if you might not have a job, you might have dropped out of school, you might be doing shitty in school, you might have just got dumped. You can't think about any of that while you're doing the damn thing, while you're working, while you're training, while you're doing anything important that's going to progress you in life. You need to be present in that thing and do that thing well. That's where taking a bite at a time comes into play. So be present during your training. Don't think about how Big Booty Judy fucking left you for Sammy Sausage Head. You think about the fact that you don't have 20-inch arms and you aren't ripping out your shirt from your muscles. That's what you need to be thinking about. And that comes into play with image training. The way that we talk about ourselves and talk to ourselves and what we do is very important. And some of these are funny. I'm not going to lie. Some of these mantras are funny. But it's all about building unbreakable confidence and not limiting yourself mentally. You can present me a study that says that there's no way that human beings can get 20-inch arms unless they get fat or fucking take steroids. And you know what I would do with that study? I would rip that study up and I would say, man, I can't read. This isn't going to give me 20-inch arms. Nothing is going to stop me from getting 20-inch arms if that's what I wanted. And that's how you need to talk about yourself. You need to set your goals not delusional, but have so much conviction in that what you're doing is going to get you jacked and give you exceptional otherworldly results, that even if, all jokes aside, you don't get 20-inch arms, because you trained with the intent and the focus and the desire to get 20-inch arms, you might get 18, 19-inch arms. You see what I'm saying, bro? You shoot for the stars, you get to the moon. Here's the thing. These are mantras that I really love. Some of them are practical and some of them are just funny. There's no way I'm not going to have a good session. Even if some things don't go as planned, there's always a lesson in that, and there's always good that can be taken from that. You might not do so well on a certain exercise. That doesn't mean you have to do shitty on the next exercise. Very seldomly are you going to go to the gym and just everything is fucked up. The only way that that's going to happen is if you didn't sleep enough and you didn't eat enough. If you fuck up on the bench press and you're just not capable of getting all your reps, bro, you hit them tricep rope push downs and you make them that +1 happen. Or you hit those leg extensions and you go ham on that. Whatever you can to get the W, you're going to get it, because there's no way you're not going to have a good session. If you have forward progression on something, you had a good session. You don't even have to fucking do more reps or weight. You can move something better. We can always clean up our form. You don't have to necessarily add reps or weight. If you can clean up that form a little bit, you made progression. And if you made progression, you had a good session, baby. This is getting me jacked as fuck, bro. I could be in the middle of a set of bicep curls, or incline curls rather. Natural hypertrophy is going to hate hearing this, bro. But I'm looking at myself in the mirror doing these incline curls with the fucking 50s, and I'm like, bro, this is getting my arms deezed as fuck. You talk about yourself like that, man, whatever you're doing, you could be doing like a shitty exercise. And that exercise is going to get you more jacked. You talk about yourself that way. My test is through the roof. Listen, fellas, I'm natural. I have no desire to take steroids, but there's just something about telling yourself that your testosterone is just through the roof, that you 70 million nanograms per deciliter as testosterone is going to allow you to have a better training session. And then, of course, we have, last but not least, one that I acquainted y'all with on a video recently about, telling you how to get impossibly meaty. I'm tired of not having 20-inch arms. If you're tired of something, bro, if you're tired of getting bullied, if you're tired of being poor, if you're tired of, not being charismatic, you're tired of whatever, you're going to want to improve wholeheartedly in that. And you're going to do whatever it takes to get to that. Case in point, you tired of not having 20-inch arms. What are you going to do? Everything you can to get 20-inch arms. That's it. Now, this one is, last one is very important before we get to like the final thoughts, and I'll leave y'all guys alone for the night. I told the Gaines Goblin, my fiance, I'd spend some time with her. It's getting a little late over here, but still I'm going to spend some time with her. I still, ironically, have a little bit of work to do as well. But community is very important. The way the world is set up now is different from when I was a kid, and it makes me sound super old, but there's a level of connectivity now where you can be friends with someone that lives on the other side of the earth from you because you have a common interest and you share a common spirit with that individual. When you look at the current roster of content creators within YouTube Fitness, a lot of us are all cool with one another. It's a crew of jacked and stacked brothers. It's a jacked and stacked brotherhood. You don't even got to call it the noble natties because some of us aren't natty. You know what I'm saying? I'm not calling nobody a fake natty. There are motherfuckers that will tell you that they take steroids. Then I'm cool with, because we all have the common goal of getting jacked and helping people and being kind. If you have a crew of jacked and stacked brothers, not only do you have a communion, information that you can bounce off of one another, there is a level of you guys battling each other to perfection. I may have misquoted that a little bit, but it's a quote that I heard once, and it makes so much sense in that if you have someone that is doing the same thing you are, they share a common goal with you, they're not on the weird fucking anime rival shit where they're trying to one-up you and make you feel bad, but it's a friendly rivalry in that you're good at this thing, they're good at that thing, and you're trying to use their performance as a metric to get better yourself. And then they elevate a little bit. And it's just a back and forth game where you're elevating one another. Having that is so valuable and gives you so much of an X factor when it comes to your training that I can't describe. I make great results mostly training by myself. And I don't believe really in training with people, but training alongside others, going on this journey alongside others, along many of the fellas that you watch, has been such a beautiful experience and has really elevated my training and elevated me as a lifter, as a coach, and I believe as a human being. And I feel that that can apply to anything. I meant to have the guts theme here. I don't think I programmed it right. But imagine the guts theme here. This is a screenshot from the Bonfire of Dreams. Final thoughts. These are a pleasure to make. This is something that I'm going to do every year for you guys, and I'm going to seek to, of course, gain more knowledge for myself, but I feel really good knowing that these videos help everyone that watches them. You're going to get something from this. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them right away, but I'm going to do my best to get to most of them. And I hope you enjoyed, fellas. I'm going to go spend some time with the Gaines Goblin. I just want to give one more final piece of appreciation. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being there. Thanks for watching all my content, liking all my shit, subscribing all the fucking time. Even though I don't do it. A lot of stuff I do on YouTube ain't right on paper, man. Like I watch other YouTube channels and they're always like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to comment, subscribe. We'll say it like 5 different times in the video, bro. But I've always gotten whatever I've needed on this platform without having to ask for it. And that's been a beautiful experience. So I appreciate you. You have a good night. Bye-bye.